Chapter 639. Kit. Long Chen's smile caused the White Lotus hegemon to frown. He snorted coldly. Hegemon Bai Qing is the hegemon of the Third Palace's Hidden Wind Palace. He was ordered by Hegemon Flawless to capture you. Surrender. Hegemon Bai Qing? That's not a good name. Long Chen shook his head. The Big Dipper Phoenix waited solemnly, as though he were about to fight a tough battle. Zhong Lang, however, was much calmer. When he saw this, he said in a low voice, He doesn't have any killing intent. No killing intent? It wasn't just the Big Dipper Phoenix. Even the White Lotus hegemon was stunned. Just as they were wondering what was going on, a bloody sword flew through the skies. The hegemon of the Five Mountains' head flew through the air, and then his body was shattered by the azure light that filled the skies. The hegemon of the Five Mountains' soul was crushed as soon as it appeared. Before he died, he didn't even know why Hegemon Bai Qing had attacked him. This scene caused the White Lotus hegemon to freeze in place, completely stupefied. The Wu clan was subordinate to one of the Third Palaces. After Long Chen had left, Hegemon Five Mountains had immediately sent word to the White Lotus hegemon, hoping to borrow his strength to suppress Long Chen. Thus, he had accompanied Hegemon Bai Qing and the Five Mountains to this place. However, the White Lotuses beneath their feet were much slower, which was why he had arrived first. But now, Hegemon Bai Qing, who had been ordered by Hegemon Flawless to suppress Long Chen, had actually attacked and killed the Five Mountains. Hegemon Bai Qing, what are you doing? The White Lotus hegemon was both confused and furious. As Hegemon Bai Qing drew near, the Big Dipper Phoenix and Zhong Lang subconsciously retreated a few steps, standing behind Long Chen. His entire body seemed to be wreathed in smoke and fire, and his face was like that of a wild lion's. Bang! Bai Qing leapt down from the White Lotus, landing in front of Long Chen. Beneath the azure dragon vein, the divine beast Warsoul Junie greets you, Master. Bai Qing knelt on one knee, her face filled with sincerity. Rumble. Everyone looked at each other in dismay, and the White Lotus hegemon stumbled back a few hundred steps. He stared at ruler Bai Qing. He couldn't believe that the palace master of the Void God Temple, one of the top 3 palaces in the 9th heaven, would pay homage to Long Chen. Swish, swish. A moment later, the White Lotus hegemon leapt into the air, stepping onto a white lotus and disappearing into the horizon. However, Long Chen and the Swanee fighting soul soared into the sky at the same time. The divine power around them was like a tidal wave, directly sealing off the surrounding space. Long Chen stared at the White Lotus ruler and smiled faintly. Since I've been waiting for you, you can't be thinking of leaving just like that, right? The White Lotus hegemon's face was ashen. But now, not to mention facing Long Chen and Long Chen, even facing a single sovereign of the upper 3 palaces would be a dead end for him. What do you want? After all, I am the ruler of the lower 3 palaces of the 9th heaven. If you kill me, you will become the enemy of the entire 9th heaven, Lord White Lotus said loudly. Before Long Chen could say anything, the Swanee fighting soul had already soared into the sky. For a moment, the sky was filled with smoke and fire, and countless streams of fire shot out with each of his movements. The White Lotus hegemon retreated as he fought, but he had no intention of fighting. In the blink of an eye, he had sustained heavy injuries. He was shocked. As far as he knew, Bai Qing was a 6th-level Nirvana realm sovereign. But now, his combat power was at least at the late-stage Nirvana realm. You want the White Lotus under my feet? I'll give it to you, I'll give it to you. The White Lotus hegemon suddenly came to a realization and hurriedly shouted. He finally understood why Long Chen had let the 5 mountain sovereigns go. The Wu family belonged to the lower 3 palaces and was under his jurisdiction. He must have been the first to receive the news. He recalled the first sentence Long Chen had said to him. Always known for your speed, Long Chen wanted the White Lotus under his feet. Stop. Long Chen waved his hand. The Swanee fighting soul immediately snorted coldly and stopped attacking. In truth, it was just as the White Lotus hegemon had thought. After finding Zhong Lang, Long Chen's next target was the White Lotus under the White Lotus hegemon's feet. He was determined to get it. The White Lotus wasn't a magic treasure, but rather a spirit object born of the void. It was incredibly fast. If that was all, it wouldn't be such a big deal. What Long Chen wanted was its innately holy aura. It would allow him to safely travel to the 9th netherworld after finding a divine general. The White Lotus hegemon panted heavily, but he still couldn't make up his mind. His talent wasn't particularly outstanding. The only reason he'd been able to reach the ruler realm was because of the Windrider's sacred lotus. He'd obtained it when he was a sage. Because of it, he'd been able to reach the ruler realm without any mishaps. But today he'd never imagined that he'd be trapped like this. A ruler who'd established a divine kingdom in the Nirvana Flame realm, and a late-stage Nirvana realm cultivator, had attacked him. Today he'd lost. But no matter how hard he racked his brains, he never imagined that the ruler of the 9th heaven, Bai Qing, who was almost second only to the flawless ruler, would worship an early-stage Nirvana realm cultivator of the 10th heaven as his master. Long Chen obtained 3 white lotuses from him. Although these white lotuses were similar in appearance to the ones under the feet of the rulers of the 5 mountains in Bian, they were actually worlds apart. Long Chen stared at the White Lotus hegemon and said in a deep voice, "Go back and tell the flawless ruler that I don't want to be enemies with him now. If he continues to pester me, although I can't kill him, the 9th heaven will become chaotic." The White Lotus hegemon nodded quickly, then turned around and fled. After the White Lotus hegemon left, Bian glanced at Beidou Feng and Zhong Lang, and said in a deep voice, "Master, with your current strength, do you want to call back the other 5? Not now, but since you've appeared, I'm afraid you can't stay in the 9th heaven any longer." Long Chen said. Bian shook his head and sneered. "Now Ruler Qi Shui of the Middle Hall and the other 2 rulers of the Lower Hall are under the control of my Mu family. Even the turmoil some time ago was secretly stirred up by my family. As long as my lord is willing, I can turn the entire 9th heaven upside down." Such words surprised Long Chen quite a bit. It seems that his status as a divine beast war soul isn't low. However, Long Chen was taken aback and asked in a daze, "Ruler Bai Qing, the Mu family? The Mu family you mentioned is the Mu family in the northern part of the 9th heaven that relies on the stone forest? It's the Greenwood Fire Vein, ranked 23rd on the Bloodline Master list," Bian said proudly. Long Chen laughed out loud. He patted Swan Xiu's shoulder and said, "I will give you the appearance of 3 people. Find me as fast as you can. One of them is a member of your Mu family, named Mu Long." Although Bian was a little puzzled, he still agreed immediately and replied, "Mu Long? There doesn't seem to be such a person among the younger generation of my family. I'll order my people to start the search." Long Chen nodded in agreement. As he spoke, he walked into the palace. In the palace, no one dared to stop Long Chen. They all prostrated themselves on the ground. "Go and find your general, Yuzhan." Long Chen stared at the yellow-robed man in front of him and said. Chapter 640. Yuzhan the burly man was a giant the size of a small mountain. His armor couldn't hide his explosive muscles, and the spear in his hand was 3 meters long and 1 inch thick. However, he didn't look funny at all. Instead, he gave people an inexplicable pressure. Long Chen stared at Yuzhan and said, "Come with me. From now on, you'll be my subordinate, the 3rd Divine General." Divine General! Everyone around them knelt on the ground, their faces full of reverence. Bestowing the title of Divine General could only be done by sovereigns and change one's fate with the power of a god. Yuzhan shook his head fiercely and clenched his spear tightly. Before he could say anything, Long Chen stopped him. Long Chen continued, "Are you the general of this country? So what if I am?" Yuzhan replied in a low voice. His words didn't seem to be respectful at all. Countless high-ranking officials, state teachers, and monarchs couldn't help but feel cold sweat all over. The state teacher didn't even dare to raise his head. He trembled as he explained, "Ruler, please calm down. This person is not smart and doesn't understand the ways of the world." "He's not smart?" The corners of Long Chen's mouth could not help but reveal a smile. Why would the Purple Star Divine General, who led 100,000 soldiers in his previous life and fought 3 heavenly regions for Long Chen, need to understand the ways of the world? Long Chen ignored the state teacher and walked in front of the monarch. He said in a low voice, "He's the general and you're the monarch. Can you let him leave with me today and become my divine general? I'm not threatening you at all. If you agree, I'll give you 10 celestial techniques and 20 celestial items." The monarch didn't dare to raise his head, afraid that he would offend Long Chen. He immediately agreed, not to mention whether Long Chen was a sovereign or not. If anyone was willing to give him 10 celestial techniques and 20 celestial items in exchange for his position as a general, he would agree. This was a brainless deal. At least in his eyes, Yuzhan was only in the virtual immortal realm. He was nothing at all. Yuzhan stared at the two of them and naturally heard their conversation. He couldn't help but look disappointed. However, he still shook his head and said, 10 types of immortal arts and 20 types of immortal treasures. They will only cause trouble for them. I've been in the army since I was young. Although I don't understand human relationships, I know how to be loyal. Take the other 2 countries into your territory and I'll go with you." Both the Big Dipper Phoenix and Bayan couldn't help but take a deep look at Yuzhan. Although he had a burly appearance, he was truly meticulous. With the 3 countries combined into one, High Nation would have the power to break away from the ancient race. Long Chen did not hesitate at all and directly agreed. He thought for a while and said, "I'll leave this matter to you. Since your clan is so powerful, I'll have a lot of strength left." Tao Wu naturally agreed. He walked up to the monarch and tossed a wooden token that was wreathed in smoke and fire. He pointed to the wooden token on the ground and said, "Take this to the ancient race behind you and let them spread the news. I believe that except for the ruler of the 9th heaven, no one will dare to not give face to my Mu family." The monarch received the jade token as if he had received a precious treasure. The name of the 9th heaven's Mu family, even though he lived in a remote place, he still heard a little about it. This was simply a great fortune for him. Yuzhan let out a long sigh. In the end, he bowed deeply to Long Chen and stood behind him. Long Chen took a deep look at Yuzhan, then left directly. "Bayan, find the other 3 people as soon as possible. Not only do I have their life forms, but I also know the information I know. It shouldn't be difficult to find them." Long Chen handed a jade slip to Bayan. Bayan immediately complied. Just as he was about to leave, Long Chen stopped him. "Find the 3 of them and bring them to the Ghost City." Bayan's footsteps suddenly stopped. He frowned deeply and said, "Ghost City? My lord, you want to go to the 9th abyssal underworld?" Seeing Long Chen nod, Bayan quickly said, "My lord, although you are a ruler now, you must not go to the 9th abyssal underworld. A few days ago there were riots in the various heavens, and part of the reason was because of the 9th abyssal underworld. The laws in the 9th abyssal underworld are almost completely different from those in the 10th heaven. It is too dangerous to enter." Long Chen waved his hand to stop Bayan from continuing. He said solemnly, "Within a month, bring the 3 people I asked you to find to the Ghost City." "Yes, my lord." Bayan bowed and could only comply. After Bayan left, Long Chen brought the trio to the Ghost City. The Ghost City was the border between the abyssal underworld and the various heavens. Apart from the 10th heaven, the other heavens were all connected to the 9th abyssal underworld, and the connecting point was the Ghost City. The ninth abyssal underworld was fundamentally different from the 10th heaven. The most obvious difference was that the ninth abyssal underworld was not formed by innate purple chi, but innate demon chi. Not only that, even the flow of time in the ninth abyssal underworld was 100 times slower than in the 10th heaven. This was also the reason why, apart from the 10th heaven, the other 9 heavens were all built in the Ghost City. They walked all the way to the Ghost City, passing through many ordinary countries, and gradually, they went deep into the uninhabited land. Their footsteps gradually slowed down. The mountains, rocks, and trees lost their original color as they moved forward. Instead, they were stained with blood. The most shocking thing was that the sky in front of them was gradually darkening, and in this darkness there was a thick layer of purple. Big Dipper Phoenix and the others couldn't help but look back, but it was still daytime. The sky seemed to have been cut open. When the day behind them completely disappeared, Long Chun stopped and said leisurely, "We've arrived at the Ghost City. After passing through here, we will reach the ninth abyssal underworld." Big Dipper Phoenix and the others couldn't help but move closer to Long Chun, and they felt waves of bone-chilling coldness coming from all directions. "Apply blood to your eyes, see the Ghost City." Long Chun reached out and 2 drops of blood fell on his eyelid. Then, the blood light seemed to flash and dissipate in the air. Everyone followed the same pattern and their expressions changed drastically. In front of them, there was a huge spatial crack that stretched from the ground to the starry sky. The crack was extremely long, but it was less than a meter wide. Through the crack, the space inside seemed to be extremely large. They could even see countless white bones walking through it. It was hair-raising. The ninth abyssal underworld is said to be the place of death. In fact, this place is like a long and thin tunnel in the 10th heaven, and the Ghost City is the connecting place. Yuzhan frowned and said with a gloomy face, "Buzz." Before they could speak, Long Chen's longsword appeared in the air, and the sword spirit woman on it seemed both real and illusory. Chapter 641. Gue Du overestimating himself? The sword spirit's words made the Big Dipper Phoenix and Zhong Lang's faces turn cold. Long Chen shook his head and didn't say anything. Yuzhan's eyes were filled with shock as he stared at Long Chen. He sucked in a breath of cold air and said, You really want to go to the ninth underworld to find the ninth underworld fire? That's the ninth underworld king's heavenly fire. Long Chen ignored Yuzhan and stared at the sword spirit. His eyes turned cold and he said, Not only do I want the ninth underworld fire, but I also want the heavenly spiritual wood and the starry sky soul. I want them all. The sword spirit was stunned. She felt it. Long Chen wasn't doing it on a whim. He was determined to cut off all means of retreat. But she didn't know that Long Chen didn't dare to relax. He was afraid that if he relaxed, he would give up. It was impossible for him to reach a level where he could fight against the 10 Directions celestial domain in 3 years. 3 years later, he would stand up and fight against most of the sovereigns in the 10 Directions celestial domain. Or should I kneel and acknowledge him as my master, continue to be the disciple that transcends the ruler, and wait patiently to become his pawn for many more years? Long Chen didn't want to think about it. He wanted to become stronger than he was in his previous life. In 3 years, he had the Chaos Golden Codex. He had the Heavenly Dragon Vein. He had the 9 Divine Beast Fighting Souls and the Emperor's body. He wanted to make a last stand. He didn't want to kneel in front of the sovereigns again. He had never craved power as much as he did today. Long Chen didn't answer the sword spirit. He didn't even explain to the Big Dipper Phoenix. He just stood there and waited for Bian to bring the other 5 divine generals. They were all powerful figures in the Firmament God Kingdom in his previous life. They were famous even in the 10 Directions celestial domain. But in the end, they all died in that battle. A few days passed. Finally, on the 3rd day after Long Chen and the others arrived at Ghost City, Bian brought dozens of people. However, they were not in good condition. Among the dozens of people, at least a dozen of them had lost their physical bodies. Only their souls remained. Long Chen and the Big Dipper Phoenix hurriedly went to greet him, asking, "How could this be? Did the flawless hegemon attack?" Bian Cheng nodded and said in a deep voice, "Since Milord wants to enter the ninth netherworld, then leave from another heaven when you return. I'm afraid this ninth heaven is a bit dangerous. That flawless hegemon didn't want to deal with you, Your Highness. He wanted to deal with my Mu clan and the people by Your Highness' side." Bian seemed to have received some information as well. He knew that the flawless ruler did not dare to kill Long Chen. However, as one of the rulers of the upper three temples of the ninth heaven, in the eyes of others, Bian had betrayed the ninth heaven. Long Chen took a deep look at Fu Qing, patted him on the shoulder and said, "All right, you can go back to the Mu family." Swan and I complied, turned around and led dozens of people away from Ghost City. The ninth heaven, flawless hegemon, it seems that you are determined to make trouble in the ninth heaven. Long Chen muttered to himself. Immediately after, he waved his right hand and sent a series of inscriptions into the void, seemingly sending a message. The Big Dipper Phoenix trio couldn't see who Long Chen was sending the message to. After a long while, Long Chen turned around and said to the three newcomers, "Today, in the name of the heavenly hegemon, I confer the title of Divine Generals to you." The three looked at each other in dismay. They seemed to have some doubts in their hearts, but none of them refused. Becoming a Divine General was a great thing for anyone in the 10 Directions celestial domain. After doing all this, Long Chen walked towards the slender space step by step. Life and death in this world are predestined, but if you come out alive, I will make you all undergo earth-shaking changes. He didn't force anyone to follow him into the netherworld, only explaining the dangers of the place. After saying that, Long Chen disappeared. No one hesitated. After all, the ninth netherworld has a fierce reputation in the 10th heaven. Only the Big Dipper Phoenix snorted coldly, glancing at Zhong Lang and Yu Zhan before taking the lead to follow Long Chen. A fierce look flashed across Zhong Lang's face, but he didn't show the slightest fear. Only Yu Zhan shook his head with a wry smile. He looked at the other three, then smiled at each other, but in the end, he also followed. Perhaps this is the reason why they can become Long Chen's divine generals. Together with the Big Dipper Phoenix, these 5 divine generals from the 9th heaven followed Long Chen into the 9th netherworld. On the other side, in the 9th heaven, the flawless hegemon's face was very ugly, and her flawless white face was full of gloominess. The white jade under her feet turned into a long carpet, and she flew out of the heavenly palace. Standing at the highest point of the heavenly palace, the flawless hegemon looked at the light array inscription in her hand, snorted coldly, and threw it into the air. Large characters condensed in the air, as if countless law forces were intertwined. The brilliance spread across the entire 9th heaven. I, a transcendent hegemon lord, have lived in seclusion for tens of thousands of years. 3 years later, at the summit of the 1st heaven, I sincerely invite the lords of the 10 heavens to witness. My disciple, the lord of the 10th heaven, the owner of the heavenly dragon bloodline, Long Chen. In just 2 short sentences, they appeared in the sky of each heavens. Long Chen? Who is this Long Chen? How come I've never heard of him before? He was accepted as a disciple by a transcendent hegemon. 3 years later, at the summit of the 1st heaven. What kind of honor is this? This Long Chen is likely to be the next strongest powerhouse in the 10th heaven. The heavenly dragon bloodline, this legendary bloodline, has been confirmed on the Bloodline Master list some time ago. This person's aptitude is probably unprecedented. The lords of the various heavens stood in the sky, and Long Chen's name was pushed to an unprecedented height. A transcendent hegemon, the strongest powerhouse in the 10th heaven. The flawless ruler looked at the light characters in the sky, and a fierce look appeared on her flawless face. All lords of the 9th heaven under my heavenly palace, come to the heavenly palace in 3 days." Her voice was like thunder, spreading out in an instant. At the same time, jade pieces condensed around her body, turning into a white and flawless jade dress. Many lords, who were originally in a state of shock because of the news of a transcendent hegemon accepting a disciple, turned into streams of light and rushed to the heavenly palace. After doing all this, the corners of the flawless ruler's mouth curled into a playful smile, and she muttered to herself, "That old fox pushed us to become the lords of the heavenly palace in the 10th heaven, and now it seems that it was all for this person. The primal chaos golden scripture, can this thing really be obtained? However, I'm afraid that the person who obtains it will have a more miserable end than anyone else." Ghost City. This was a city made of bones, a city of death through and through. The entire city was filled with white bones. Chapter 642. Demons. The 9th Underworld. It had always been known as the place where the dead were reborn. It wasn't until the sovereigns of the various celestial palaces opened up the ghost capital that everyone understood the 9th Underworld's essence. It was a space completely different from the 10 Directions celestial realm. Many sovereigns even saw it as an unprecedented secret realm of opportunity. However, the dangers it contained were so great that even sovereigns didn't dare to venture too deep. Beyond the netherworld's crack in the sky was the ghost capital. Everyone who stepped into the ghost capital from the netherworld's crack in the sky was bound to step onto a winding road of bone spike. At this moment, Long Chun and the 6 divine generals were part of this road of bone spike. However, each of them had lost their physical bodies when they stepped onto the road, leaving only their bones behind. Big Dipper Phoenix, Yuuzhan, and the others looked at each other and couldn't help but gasp. Yuuzhan couldn't help but touch his own burly body, but he couldn't feel anything. His fingers touched only thick bones. The other 2 people, Mu Long and Bai and Brat, couldn't help but take a few steps back. Even though they were just bones in front of them, they could still feel their fear. "Stop!" Long Chen's eyes narrowed as he saw this. He reached out to stop the 2. However, a black wind blew. Everyone felt as if their bodies were about to turn into scraps of paper and fly away. Big Dipper Phoenix suddenly lowered his body and stood firmly on the ground. The 2 who retreated were much more unlucky. They actually retreated more than 10 steps. Hiss! Their skeletal bodies couldn't help but tremble. Everyone immediately looked over and saw that the bone spike was actually sucking the blood of the 2 people like a living creature. Long Chun took a step forward and waved his hand to lift the 2 up. He then said to them, "Don't be afraid. This place doesn't really remove your physical bodies. It's just that the laws restrict your physical bodies from seeing. This road of bone spikes absorbs 1/3 of your blood essence every time you step on it. If you step on it 3 times, you'll become a part of this road of bones." After Long Chen finished speaking, he pointed his bony finger at his eyes. Only now did the crowd notice that Long Chen's eyes had not changed in the slightest. Instead, there was even a faint trace of a powerful deterrent force that made them tremble in fear. According to the rules of this place, if a living person enters this place, they will have a body of white bones. If ghosts and other souls enter this place, they will have a physical body. Everyone nodded successively, and they couldn't help but feel slightly fearful towards the strangeness of the netherworld. After the explanation, Long Chun led the group to a city at the end of the road. The city was also made of white bones. However, these white bones were not made up of countless human bones, nor were they piled up together. Instead, it was the complete skeleton of a demonic beast Gu clan. At the entrance of the city, there was a huge mouth made of white bones with crisscrossing fangs. The front of the city was quite vast. Long Chen and the others could even see white pillars on both sides. However, these pillars were slightly bent inwards like ribs. Immediately afterward, the end of the city became narrower and narrower. The long and narrow passage was like the tailbone of the demonic beast Gu clan, until it turned into a white dot and disappeared into the bloody darkness. Even though there was no sign, everyone knew that as long as they passed through that place, they would enter the netherworld, because this city is the ghost city. Long Chen's pace was very fast, and Bei Dufeng and the others soon disappeared behind him. Long Chen didn't look back, but his divine sense fell into their ears at the same time. You can walk this road by yourselves, I will wait for you at the end of the ghost city. Immediately afterward, Long Chen disappeared into the crowd. The 6 people, including Bei Dufeng, looked at each other in confusion. They were very puzzled. There were only a few people from the 9th heaven who entered this place, but why were there so many white bones going to the ghost city? On the other side, Long Chen's figure was extremely fast, crossing 100 meters in the blink of an eye. In just half an hour, Long Chen was already standing at the gate of the city. Your Excellency, you have good eyesight. When Long Chen was about to enter the city gate, which looked like a giant mouth of a monster beast, he was stopped by 2 people on both sides. Each of them had a white bone spear about 2 meters long in their hands, which was crisscrossed in front of Long Chen. The strange thing was that except for Long Chen, the other white bones passed through the white bone spears one by one and walked into the city. Long Chen looked up and saw a middle-aged man wearing a blood-red ghost mask standing on the city wall. This man and the 2 guards who stopped Long Chen all have physical bodies, but their appearance is disgusting. Especially the man wearing the blood-red ghost mask on the city wall. There were 3 pairs of eyes on his face, and each of them was an extremely dense dark green color. From the exposed parts of his armor, one could even see that his arms were actually 2 giant green pythons. Long Chen looked up and said faintly, I don't know what your Excellency Demon Race wants to talk to me about. Demon Race, the unique product of the Netherworld and the Netherworld, which can also be said to be the combination of the Demon Race and the human race. The 9 ghost capitals were all managed by Demon Race. This was one of the terms of the contract between the Netherworld and the 10 Directions Sky Domain. The Sky Domain was managed by the human race, while the Netherworld was managed by the Demon Realm. So the ghost capitals were naturally managed by Demon Race. Please come into the city, Your Excellency. I've already prepared food and wine. The Demon Race on the city wall looked deeply at Long Chen and said in a deep voice, gesturing his hand to invite him in. Long Chen nodded. The bone spears of the guards in front of him had already been removed, and he strode into the city. 2 women with almost perfect figures appeared in front of Long Chen. Their small and delicate bodies were actually naked, and their appearance was full of bewitching beauty, filled with the impulse to make one's blood boil. Our master has invited Your Excellency to a banquet in the city. The 2 women, one in front and one behind, led Long Chen to the center of the city. Long Chen was now only a skeleton, and no one could see his expression. His smile had gradually turned cold. Half of the reason why Long Chen chose to search for the 9 underworld fire first was because Xuegong Shusan had told him some information about the 9 underworld fire. The other reason was that he had fused with the Netherworld Eye in the 10th Sky Palace. This pair of eyes allowed him to have a unique advantage in the Netherworld. For example, the 2 beautiful demon girls in front of him. Demon girls, the product of the combination of the human race and demon race. The human race bloodline was the main, and the demon race bloodline was extremely thin, but miraculously, they had a face and body that far surpassed that of ordinary human women. This also allowed them to have a physical body regardless of whether they were in the heaven domain or the netherworld. This kind of woman had always been the exclusive property of many sovereign realm experts. But if Long Chen touched a finger of these 2 women now, he would most likely be consigned to eternal damnation. Through the Netherworld Eye, Long Chen could clearly see the densely packed snake-like things in their bodies. Chapter 643. Dressing Devil Calamity Snake. This item was the most feared item in the 9 underworld. Even when the ghost capital was established, the rulers of the heaven domain and the lord of the underworld had a strict ban on this item. They would not allow a single one to enter the heaven domain. This was because even if a ruler accidentally touched it, even if they didn't die, their god body would dissipate. Under the lead of the two women, Long Chen walked into the city lord's mansion. In the spacious hall there were bones on both sides that connected to the entire city. Above his head was a huge breastbone. This was the skeleton of a underworld wyvern. Long Chen had the fortune to see it once in his previous life. That time, Long Chen really couldn't forget it. It was also because of that time that he, who was originally prepared to search the 9 great ghost capital and enter the 9th underworld to find the primal chaos golden codex, completely rejected this idea. In the hall, there was a demon woman in every dozen or so pavilions. There were hundreds of them, and all of them were naked. Their naked appearances were almost the same as the 2 demon women by Long Chen's side. Such a scene was enough to make any man's blood boil. More than 10 meters away from the entrance of the hall and 100 meters away on the other side, there was a long table. The table was filled with wine and food. Long Chen naturally sat at the table at the entrance. On the other side, the demon dweller on the city wall was already sitting upright. His pair of dark green eyes stared at Long Chen, never leaving. This blood essence bone road actually took you less than 2 hours to complete. This is the first time I've seen something like this in my life. Although the man's words sounded very polite, his demon dweller appearance didn't give people the slightest good impression. Long Chen didn't have any intention of arguing. He directly said in a deep voice, "I wonder what advice you have for me?" Pa pa pa. The demon dweller city lord crossed his arms and made a series of sounds. 2 women from each side walked towards Long Chen and then leaned on Long Chen's body. Buzz. The 4 women exhaled like orchids. Long Chen sat cross-legged, but he didn't move like a mountain. However, his skeleton-like body gradually began to regain its human form, and his physical body had already appeared. These 10 women were using devil chi to envelop him. "I want your eyes. As long as you agree, you can choose any witch here. I can even give you many rare items in the 9th underworld." The devil dweller stared at Long Chen, the green light in his eyes jumping like flames. Bang bang bang. Long Chen's body emitted rays of light, and in a flash, the 4 witches beside him turned into powder. Slender snake-shaped phantoms suddenly hissed around Long Chen, and most of them even surged towards Long Chen's body. Unfortunately, before these snakes could even get close to Long Chen, they had already been reduced to dust. Under the Nirvana fire domain, it was impossible to advance even an inch. Long Chen stared at the devil dweller coldly and said in a deep voice, "Since you know my eyes are extraordinary, you shouldn't use such a despicable method." A pitch-black aura swept out from the city lord's body. He stared at Long Chen and said coldly, "You're actually a sovereign realm expert. It's been a long time since a sovereign realm expert entered the underworld." Long Chen didn't answer. Although the city lord was shocked to see Long Chen display his sovereign cultivation, he wasn't afraid. After a moment of silence, the devil dweller spoke again. "It's not a wise move for a sovereign to enter the 9th underworld. If you give me your eyes, maybe I can get what you want for you." Several witches died, but the surrounding witches didn't react at all, as if they were walking corpses. Long Chen said in a deep voice, "What if I say I want the 9th underworld fire? If you have it, I can give you the netherworld eyes." 9 underworld flames? Long Chen's words shocked the ghost capital's city lord. Long Chen shook his head and was about to leave. "Although I can't get it, I know that even if you're a sovereign, you'll need 3 things to get it, and I have all 3 in my city." The city lord saw that Long Chen was about to leave and hurriedly said. Before Long Chen said anything, he continued, "You should think about it carefully. At least think about your companions who haven't entered the city yet. They seem to be dying on the blood essence bone nurturing path." Long Chen didn't seem to be worried at all and said indifferently, "You don't need to worry about them, but I'm very interested in the 3 things you mentioned." When Long Chen walked out of the city lord's mansion, there were still 2 women in front of him leading the way, but these 2 women had a bit more spirit in their eyes. After walking for a kilometer, Long Chen sighed, and with a wave of his hand, 2 loose robes fluttered down, covering the bodies of the 2 women. The 2 women stood in place, not knowing what to do for a while. Long Chen shook his head and said, "It's okay, wear it." "Thank you, young master." The 2 women nodded, but their posture of wearing clothes was very clumsy. Under the lead of the 2, Long Chen came to the end of the ghost capital. Indeed, as Long Chen and the others saw, this is the tale of the beast. As they walked to this place, their bodies gradually shrank, and finally disappeared completely from the white bone ghost capital. Light flowed like a tide. When Long Chen appeared again, he was standing at the tail of the white bone ghost capital. "Young master, this is the ghost capital that connects to the 4th heaven." The 2 women bowed and said. Long Chen nodded, but he didn't leave immediately. Instead, he looked back at the 2 women and asked, "How many women like you are in the ghost capital of the 9th heaven? Although the scene here is similar, it's not the ghost capital of the 9th heaven." When the 2 women heard Long Chen's words, their eyes lit up at first, but then dimmed again, leaving only a little bit of spirit. They replied, "We were born in the ghost capital. There are tens of thousands of humans in the ghost capital. In order to mate with the demons and give birth to women," Long Chen snorted coldly, his heart full of gloominess. He only believed 30% of the words of the ghost capital of the 9th heaven. This person is definitely not a good person. "The 2 of you can wait for me here. I will return in 2 hours, Long Chen said to the 2 of them. When the 2 witches saw Long Chen leave, they looked at each other and smiled miserably. They clutched their clothes tightly. This is the first time they put on clothes in more than 10 years. The slightly older woman bit her lower lip and couldn't help but say, Can he save us? I want to go to the heaven, to the land of the human race." "Save us? I'm afraid he can't even protect himself. Rulers shouldn't enter the ghost capital, let alone the ghost capital." On the other side, on the Blood Essence Bone Formation path, the Big Dipper Phoenix and the other 5 only moved less than a few hundred meters. They were all treading on thin ice. Chapter 644. Isn't it better? Blood Essence Bone Road. What a vivid name. Using the power of blood essence to nurture this road of bones. Beidou Feng had lost at least 1/3 of his blood on this road. Seeing the city gate in front of them, they couldn't help but breathe a long sigh of relief. Even though all that was left of them were their bones, everyone could still feel the sense of relaxation. On this road, many bones were illusory, but there were also many real people like them. And these people had great enmity between each other. If they were careless, they would be attacked. As they approached Ghost Capital, the cold wind became stronger and stronger. Under the strong wind, once touched by the bone spike, 1/3 of his blood essence would be sucked away. Beidou Feng and the others had seen with their own eyes a person's flesh and blood regenerate before he died, but in the end, he turned into ashes. That was a heaven immortal. After his death, the bone spur split into 3. The middle one even had a flower blossoming, blood-red and bewitching. Immediately afterward, many bones turned around and fought for it. Then, more people died, and more blood flowers appeared. Originally, they thought that not many people had really stepped into Ghost Capital, but later they found that was not the case. Most of them were from the first 3 heavens. On this ancient road, there were people from the 1st to the 9th heaven at the same time. They were clearly in one place, but when they finally passed through this place and entered the city, they entered another space. Beidou Feng and the others watched as the people in front of them stepped into the city gate and disappeared in the blink of an eye. They could even clearly see that an ancient character, 3, had suddenly appeared on top of the city gate. It was a person from the 3rd heaven. Beidufeng and the others looked at each other and asked if they should enter the city. They only had 3 blood-colored flowers in their hands. However, they all felt that the power contained in the blood-colored flowers was very majestic. Let's enter the city first. After all, Milord's goal is the 9th netherworld, and this place is just ghost capital. Mu Long seemed to still have some lingering fear. Hearing Mu Long's voice, the originally hesitant people subconsciously stepped toward the city gate. However, 2 bone spears blocked their path. The white bone spikes were the same as the ones that had stopped Long Chen. However, there were a few more guards at the city gate. I'm very sorry, everyone, please go back and walk the White Bone Road a few more times. The ghost capital city lord on the city wall stared at everyone with a playful look in his eyes. As soon as he finished speaking, the white bone spear in the hands of the city guards had already transformed into a graceful swan as it pounced towards the Big Dipper Phoenix and the others. The Big Dipper Phoenix was instantly enraged. He raised his hand to counterattack, but Yu Zhan pulled him back. Yu Zhan said, "Everything depends on the Lord. Attacking someone from the ghost capital is a great taboo in the 10 Directions Heaven domain." Although Long Chen left first, they knew that Long Chen would not abandon them. If they were to have a conflict with the ghost capital's city lord now, it would most likely cause unnecessary trouble. Before Big Dipper Phoenix and the others had time to think, they saw a strong wind blowing on the blood essence bone nurturing path. The chilly wind howled, as if a ghost had died in the air. Everyone felt their vision darken, and when they reappeared, they were standing at the starting point of the path. While everyone was furious, Zhong Lang opened his mouth for the first time. This path experience, Zhong Lang spoke very little, and he even stuttered when speaking human language. But at this moment, his words made everyone understand Long Chen's intention of leaving them here. They looked at each other and walked towards the city gate again. The city lord sneered and muttered to himself, "I didn't expect to meet such a character this time. Even the flawless ruler personally sent a message. But this deal is not bad." On the other side, in the 4th heaven, Long Chen stood on the city wall, watching the Big Dipper Phoenix and the others return to the entrance of the White Bone Road. The Blood Essence Bone Road intersected with space. Although Long Chen was in the 4th heaven, he could still see everything that happened on the White Bone Road. Long Chen got up and rushed to the end of the city. The 2 witches were still waiting for Long Chen without moving a step. It's just that the people passing by looked back at the 2 from time to time, and there were even a few men who came forward to tease them. It has to be said that the 2 witches in loose robes were really charming. These 2 witches are from the 9th ghost, right? Only the witches of that place are not allowed to wear clothes. They are completely playthings. Aren't they naked under their clothes? Don't you want to see? Haha. Several people said and waved their hands, tearing off the clothes of the 2 witches. The eyes of the 2 witches were filled with dim light, but they had no intention of resisting. This was their fate. However, Long Chen returned at this time. With a wave of Long Chen's hand, the torn clothes rolled back and covered their bodies again. "Get lost." Long Chen looked at the 2 skeletons and shouted coldly. The 2 witches felt the pressure from Long Chen, and their expressions changed, but one of them couldn't help but say in a deep voice, "These 2 are just playthings of the 9th heaven, why do you have to do this? Okay, let's go." The other person seemed to be a little afraid of Long Chen, pulling the person beside him and rushing out of the last teleportation area. After the 2 left, Long Chen snorted coldly and didn't care. The 2 witches grabbed the clothes on their bodies again, looking like a drowning person grabbing a piece of driftwood. No one knows what it means for them to be covered with clothes. "Young master, you should go, kill us before you go." After a long while, the 2 women said to Long Chen in a deep voice, as if they had made a great decision. Long Chen looked at the 2 women deeply and said in a deep voice, "Why should I go? Why should I kill you? We have received news that the city lord has received a message from the flawless ruler of the 9th heaven. I'm afraid you will lose your life if you go back this time. Long Chen wasn't shocked by the words of the two women. Instead, there was a hint of pity on his face. He sighed. Long Chen said, "Let's go back to the ninth heaven." "Young master, have you completed the mission?" the two asked. "No, I have thought of a more suitable way to get those three things," Long Chen said lightly. He reached an agreement with the city lord to obtain the souls of the three people for him. But when he came here, he had already met three people in an hour. These three people are by no means evil, they can even be said to be rare good people in the ghost capital. Long Chen's answer puzzled the two witches. One of them whispered, "If you haven't completed the mission, why do you still want to go back? You can go directly to the underworld from here. The Bone Road leads to the Nine Ghost Capital, and the end of the Nine Ghost Capital can also lead to the Ninth Netherworld." Chapter 645. Changing the City. Lord Longchen originally wanted to step into the transmission array and return to the Ninth Ghost Capital, but the two women behind him subconsciously pulled him back. Both of their eyes were filled with terror. One of them hurriedly said to Longchen, "Young master, you mustn't do this. Although you are a sovereign powerhouse, you can't kill the city lord of the Ghost Capital. The city lord of the Ghost Capital is protected by the contract between the underworld and the heavenly domain. Even if he makes a mistake, he has to discuss it with the heavenly palace's ruler and the underworld's ruler. Especially the demonic snake city lord of the ninth heaven, he must not be killed." Long Chen paused, and one of the witches quickly said, "He is the son of the underworld's desolate snake prison's lord." Long Chen frowned slightly, but he still stepped into the transmission array with the two witches. When he reappeared, he and the two women appeared again. The scene didn't seem to have changed at all. They were still standing at the end of a white bone city, and behind them was still the transmission array. However, the two witches knew that this is the Ninth Ghost Capital. This is not only because they are too familiar with this place, but also because the demonic Snake City Lord is standing in place dozens of meters in front of them. At this moment, there are two guards beside him, but the two guards are wearing heavy armor and holding dark purple light whips. Their appearance is indeed no different from that of a human, but there are some scales on their cheeks, and a purple flame is jumping between their eyebrows. Your Excellency is in a good mood, wearing clothes for the two witches, TSK. The demonic Snake City Lord slowly walked towards Longchen, but his eyes fell on the two witches. The two witches trembled all over, their hands loosened, and their clothes fell to the ground. The demonic Snake City Lord didn't seem to mention the deal with Longchen. Instead, he said indifferently, "Since your Excellency has such a good mood, follow me around the city. After all, it's rare to see a sovereign powerhouse in the Ghost Capital." Long Chen didn't speak, but his eyes were very calm. He nodded and agreed. Long Chen followed the demonic snake into the hinterland of the city, on the street behind the city lord's mansion. Although this place is the Ghost Capital, there are still many merchants, but these people are at least at the intermediate stage of the Earth Immortal realm. Among them were people of the white bone race, as well as many demons with fleshly bodies. If this market was placed in the outside world, perhaps no one would have thought that these skeletons were real human beings, and that the ones with fleshly bodies were demons. After passing through the streets, Demon Snake City's city lord led Longchen to a huge bone building. The bone building was empty. However, when they reached this place, the two witches' faces were deathly pale. They were unwilling to take a single step forward, as if the path ahead was the purgatory of the netherworld. "Aren't you going to lead the way for this Lord Ruler to have a look?" A hint of amusement appeared at the corners of the demonic Snake City Master's mouth. The two witches were shivering, and their loose clothes were already soaked in cold sweat. When they stepped into the building, Long Chen's power of sovereign enveloped the two of them. A warm feeling like the spring rain cleansed their souls. The two of them followed closely behind Long Chen. Although their bodies were no longer trembling, it was more like Long Chen was walking with them. Haha! Demon Snake City's city lord seemed to find this scene very amusing and laughed without concealing it. However, the two guards beside him didn't show the slightest expression from beginning to end. They simply walked beside him, not leaving his side for even a single step. Following behind Demon Snake City's city lord, Long Chen was also as motionless as a mountain. He seemed to be taking advantage of the situation. After entering the bone building, they walked a mere 100 meters before arriving at a tunnel. The tunnel was less than 10 meters long and wide. Judging from the location of the bone building, it should lead directly to the bottom of the city gate. The two witches were almost paralyzed on the ground. They clung tightly to Long Chen's arm, as if they were holding on to their last hope. Miserable screams could be heard coming from the bottom of the tunnel. Long Chen could clearly hear that it was a woman's voice. As they moved forward, the dark tunnel quickly lit up, and the space gradually became wider. The screams in their ears grew louder and louder. When the crowd came to a stop, Long Chen was also stunned. The two witches behind him were paralyzed on the ground, but their hands were still tightly clutching their clothes. Even the two guards standing beside Demon Snake City's city lord couldn't help but frown deeply. The spacious underground space was decorated in a rather grand manner. The walls were also covered with glaring white crystals. However, below the crystals were countless stone pillars with carvings. On the stone pillars were chains as thick as an arm. Between every two pillars, there were chains crisscrossing each other, and a woman was chained to each of the chains. Among these women were witches, but there were also many humans. Some of them had even died to the chains. In front of each woman stood a member of the devil race. Some of the women even formed a long line in front of them. This scene caused Long Chen's killing intent to surge. This person was actually raising humans, and thus constantly nurturing witches to become his playthings. Do you see clearly, sir? How many clothes do you have? There are more than 10 rooms behind us, and each of them is missing a piece of clothing. Haha! Demon Snake City Lord stared at Long Chen mockingly. He didn't seem to fear Long Chen's cultivation at all. Perhaps it was the two guards by his side that gave him an indescribable confidence. Long Chen took a deep breath, then said, "No need. I don't have that many clothes." Demon Snake City Lord stared deeply at Long Chen. He seemed to be in an extremely good mood at Long Chen's admission of defeat. His two serpent arms even flicked their forked tongues. Forcing a ruler to admit defeat like this gave him a perverted sense of pleasure. Demon Snake City Lord said, "Enough. Give me the items and I'll give them to you. Then you can leave." "Oh right. I'm afraid those followers of yours won't be able to leave with you. Someone paid a high price to keep them here." Long Chen was restricted by the rules of the ghost capital, and only had a body of bones left. No one knew what expression he had on his face. However, his eyes were so cold that they sent chills down one's spine. They were too calm. He stared at Demon Snake, his voice flat. "Do you really have the 3 items needed to obtain the Netherworld Flame?" "Of course I do. The ice of gloomy water, the frost of cold moon, and the bone of ice python. You only need to give me the souls of the 3 people I need." Demon Snake City Lord seemed somewhat impatient. Long Chen nodded, then murmured, "I don't have many clothes, but I don't think they're lacking clothes." Long Chen's strange words startled everyone. They didn't know what he was trying to say. "What they want is your life." Chapter 646. Destiny and Good Fortune. Long Chen had actually made a move. The instant the Nirvana Flame domain and the god behind him appeared, the surrounding laws were instantly dispersed. He once again transformed into a human body, and a holy weapon appeared in his right hand at some unknown time. Demonic Snake City's city master's expression changed. He hadn't expected that Long Chen would actually dare to attack him in Ghost Capital, especially when there were 2 underworld demon guards by his side. With one strike, the light was like a tide. Half of demonic Snake City's city master's body was almost shattered, but he was saved by the 2 guards by his side. Impudent! You dare attack Ghost Capital's city master! The 2 guards shouted. Long Chen's gaze was like a blade, and he pointed the sword in his hand at the women around him. He coldly said, "Who gave them the right to raise humans like this?" When Ghost Capital was first established, it was to allow humans to safely pass through this place and enter the netherworld underworld. Since he violated the contract, why can't I kill him? Why can't I? After Long Chen finished speaking, he didn't give the 3 people a chance to speak. The long weapon in his hand fell, and the Nirvana flame domain turned into a sword ray that overflowed into the sky. It actually forcibly split the entire city tower apart. Long Chen jumped out and soared into the sky. When he appeared again, he was already on the city tower's high platform. On the other side, the 2 guards and demonic Snake City's city master followed closely behind Long Chen. The numerous guards around the city tower also began to rush over from all directions. On the path of blood essence nurturing bones, everyone stopped in their tracks, their faces filled with astonishment. That's a sovereign powerhouse. A sovereign powerhouse actually stepped into Ghost Capital and even attacked the 9th region's city master. Quickly look, those 2 guards are underworld demon guards. Rumor has it that demonic Snake City's city master is the son of Desolate Snake Prison's prison master. Now it seems that it's true. A sovereign powerhouse attacking Ghost Capital was truly a rare sight in 100 years. Rumble. Just as everyone's voices fell, they saw Long Chen's sword strike directly, smashing the 2 underworld demon guards and demonic Snake City's city master into the ground. The entire Ghost Capital seemed to shake. The 2 demon guards glared at Long Chen and roared, "Do you think you can come to the netherworld and behave atrociously just because you're a sovereign?" Nether guards, summon the King of Hell. The long whips in their hands crisscrossed and streaked across the sky. They actually turned into lines of mysterious inscriptions and interweaved into a formation in the air. In just a few breaths of time, a demonic shadow descended from the sky above Ghost City and landed on the 2 nether guards. Everyone stared fixedly at this scene. Such a scene was truly rare. The nether demonic guards were the direct subordinates of the Lord of the Underworld, the Nether King, and their strength was at least at the heavenly immortal realm. However, there were still people who dared to provoke the demonic guards even in the sovereign realm. The reason was that this summoning technique was equivalent to the descent of the Netherworld King's clone. The fleshly bodies of the 2 heavenly immortal stage fiend guards swelled up rapidly. In an instant they grew to a height of 100 zhang. The purple runes on their glabella spread across their entire bodies. Dark purple bone spurs protruded from their backs like jagged rock. As their bodies grew larger, their auras also soared abruptly. They had actually reached the sovereign realm. Human of the heaven domain, quickly apologize to our Lord, the Nether King. Otherwise, today will be the day you die. The 2 demonic guards whipped the long whips in their hands. Boundless demonic aura transformed into divine light. Swoosh. Swoosh. Under Long Chen's attack, Bei Dufeng and the others on the Blood Essence Bone Road rushed to the city gate again and soared into the sky. As divine generals, although some of them did not have a deep relationship with Long Chen, they still had unprecedented loyalty to Long Chen. Unfortunately, just as they were about to attack, Long Chen waved his hand and said, "All of you, stand down for now. You can't interfere in this battle." Bei Dufeng and the others' faces were ashen. However, none of them disobeyed Long Chen's words. They finally understood why Long Chen did not choose Bai Un to accompany them. Instead, he let the 5 of them enter the 9th underworld together. Although they had been accepted as divine generals by Long Chen, their current strength was still too weak. Where did this sovereign come from? How dare he be so arrogant? This is not the heaven domain, but the Ghost City. Although the Ghost City is a border area, This place is already under the jurisdiction of the ninth underworld. He's asking for trouble. He's refusing the help of others? I see that these people's cultivations are not bad. If they help him stall one of them, he might have a chance. Everyone was puzzled by Long Chen's actions. They only felt that it was unwise for him to fight one against two demonic guards. Demonic Snake City Lord's body had already recovered. He stared at Long Chen and said coldly, "The flawless sovereign originally wanted me to spare your life and only kill your companions. Now I must take your life. Capture him for me. Take out his divine soul and let it be eaten by the desolate snake." Hearing this, the two demonic guards attacked Long Chen again. The power of their attacks was far greater than before. The two of them were actually evenly matched with Long Chen for a while. However, the more they fought, the more frightened they became. Long Chen's methods were unpredictable. With the Nirvana Fire Domain, he was in an invincible position. In less than a quarter of an hour, the two demonic guards' expressions changed drastically. They cried out involuntarily, "The power of creation, the fate of all living beings. You're the sovereign who built the statue. Gods have fate and creation." Just as the two finished speaking, the whips in their hands shattered into pieces. At the same time, Long Chen's sword directly shattered the two demonic guards' bodies. Then, with a cold snort, he leaped in front of Demonic Snake City Lord. Demonic Snake City Lord wanted to say more, but Long Chen's sword pierced through his chest and lifted him into the air. In a short time, the situation changed completely. Everyone was stunned on the spot. No one expected that the two demonic guards, who had almost reached the sovereign realm, would be defeated by Long Chen in such a short time. Did you hear that? This person is actually the sovereign who built the divine nation and built the statue. How is this possible? There are only a few statues in the 10 heavens, and each of them has reached the Yin-Yang sovereign realm or even the Six Paths realm. No wonder Demonic Snake City Lord said that the flawless sovereign of the 9th heaven is going to attack this person. The 9th heaven has a statue. Everyone sighed. There was no longer any contempt in their eyes when they looked at Long Chen. Instead, they were full of reverence and awe. Someone who could build a divine nation and build a statue was equivalent to competing with the strongest in the 10 heavens for fate and creation. How could he not be an ordinary person? Demonic Snake City Lord was in great pain. His body was lifted into the air by Long Chen. Demonic Snake City Lord was only at the peak of the heavenly immortal realm, but he could not withstand a single blow from Long Chen, who was at the Nirvana realm. Demonic Snake City Lord did not expect Long Chen, who was at the early stage of the Nirvana realm, to be able to defeat two demonic guards who had used the descending technique. Don't kill me. I was wrong before. Since you're a sovereign realm expert and built a divine nation, why did you offend the netherworld to kill me? Didn't you do it for these women? I'll let them go, and your companions can leave at will. Chapter 647. Call your father. As City Master Demonic Snake spoke, the giant pythons in his hands transformed into two streaks of light, one black and one white. They charged towards Long Chen's Dantian. Don't! The people who spoke were the two demon guards who had been destroyed by Long Chen. The power of Yin and Yang? The moment the light appeared, Long Chen felt his hair stand on end. This was the power of Yin and Yang that only a Yin-Yang sovereign could use. The moment the black and white lights appeared, the surrounding space seemed to turn black and white. Everyone seemed to have fallen into an extremely special state. Only Long Chen's body was surrounded by a gray aura that wrapped around him. In this black and white world, only Long Chen had color. You're courting death. Long Chen shouted coldly. The Nirvana flame domain behind him turned into an impenetrable wall in front of his Dantian. Rumble. The two streaks of energy landed on the Nirvana flame domain, causing Long Chen's body to faintly tremble. The originally dazzling Nirvana flame domain actually seemed to lose its color. PFFF. Long Chen spat out a mouthful of blood. He stared at demonic snake and said coldly, I didn't expect someone to give you the power of yin and yang. Unfortunately, you met me today. Bang! Long Chen's hand moved, and the light from his holy weapon turned into thousands of streaks of light that crushed City Master Demonic Snake. The moment Demonic Snake's divine soul appeared, his eyes were filled with shock and astonishment. He never imagined that Long Chen would be able to block the power of yin and yang. That was a life-saving measure his father had left behind for him. However, he didn't know that the power of yin and yang was similar to fortune and fortune. If Long Chen was just an ordinary sovereign, his body would have been destroyed even if he didn't die from this sneak attack. This was also the reason why the two demon guards wanted to stop him right away. Using this move was tantamount to courting death. The moment Demonic Snake's divine soul appeared, Long Chen waved his hand and caught him. He also took his storage ring. Don't kill me, I'll give you anything you want. This time, Demon Snake City's City Lord was truly afraid. His voice was filled with fear. The souls of the two demon guards hurriedly walked over as well. They were no longer as domineering as before. They only stared at Long Chen and said respectfully, Senior, please give our underworld some face. After all, he is the son of the Desolate Snake Prison's prison master. Long Chen stared at the two of them and frowned. In his previous life, he had some understanding of the Desolate Snake region's Hell Master, Mo Xian. The 9 underworlds were divided into 4 regions: Desolate Snake Prison, Underworld, Purgatory, Eternal Life Domain. What was different from the 10 Directions Celestial Domain was that these 4 lands were actually in the 9 underworlds and were not independent spaces. However, its geographical location was completely different from that of the demon race. Of course, the strongest was the Nether Realm, because the Nether Realm had the Nether King, the Netherworld King. After the ancient era, the Heaven Domain gradually flourished, and the Ghost Domain was not established. Many people fixed their eyes on the 9th underworld. The time and many other rules here were great opportunities for the human race. As long as they could resist the innate demon cheese corrosion, they would soar to the sky. More and more people poured into the demon realm, and a great war broke out. In the end, the Netherworld King stepped in and defeated the 10 Directions Celestial Domain's sovereigns. Rumors said that the Netherworld King was most likely a Heavenly Ascension Realm sovereign. The Netherworld King had not appeared since that battle, but the 9 underworlds were still feared by the other Heaven Domain's sovereigns. Thus, they established a contract to keep the Ghost Domain. However, in comparison, the one Long Chen was most unwilling to provoke was the Desolate Snake Prison's Hell Master. The Purgatory and Desolate Snake Prison had the word prison in their names, which spoke volumes of how terrifying they were. These 2 domains were the most dangerous places in the 9 underworld. The demon race in these 2 domains held great hatred for the human race, and the Desolate Snake Prison's Hell Master, Mo Xian, was a temperamental and vengeful person. In his previous life, Long Chen fought with him, and in the end, the underworld was shaken. Long Chen was besieged, and in the end, he was chased out of the 9 underworld. Long Chen took a deep breath, looked at the demon snake, and said solemnly, "Call your father, I have something to talk to him." When everyone heard this, they were startled. No one had expected that Long Chen would want to talk to the Desolate Snake Prison's Hell Master, Mo Xian. After all, his son's body had been destroyed by Long Chen. The 2 demon guards immediately let out a sigh of relief. Although Long Chen's action was rude, at least the demon snake's life was saved for the time being. The demon snake nodded repeatedly and agreed. He was held captive by Long Chen, and he could even feel that his divine soul could disappear from this world forever at any time. Sovereigns had gods, so it would be easy for them to destroy his divine soul. The demon snake's divine soul trembled as it carved inscriptions in the air. Soon, a snake image formed a demonic pattern that swallowed it. An oval-shaped black hole seemed to appear in the space within the demonic pattern. A huge snake head rushed out of it and tore the black hole apart. It was a huge python with 2 crowns on its head and legs under its abdomen. The huge python's eyes were actually black and white, like a crescent moon in the night sky. As the huge python moved, everyone in the space felt as if countless thunderbolts were exploding in their mind. They felt as if their spiritual energy was about to leave their bodies, and they were filled with fright. The space turned black and white once again. Only the huge python and Long Chen remained unchanged. Buzz! The huge python coiled up, and in the blink of an eye, its head turned into a human's head. However, this head was still extraordinarily large. It was connected to the snake's body, and it made people shudder. This person had no eyebrows or nose, only a mouth and a pair of eyes. However, this pair of eyes seemed to be able to capture people's souls. He stared at Long Chen for a long time without saying anything. In the end, his gaze fell on the demon snake's divine soul. A sovereign who's not even 30 years old. You're really a rare genius. However, your distinguished self is bullying my son with your sovereign cultivation. His voice gradually turned cold, but it was also incomparably dignified. Yin and yang energy flickered in his eyes, as if he wanted to see through Long Chen. However, he discovered that besides being able to see Long Chen's true age, he couldn't see anything else. It was as if Long Chen's body was covered in a layer of unbreakable sandpaper. Not even 30 years old. Everyone seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. A heaven-defying sovereign who had condensed the Nirvana flame domain was actually not even 30 years old? A person who wasn't even 30 years old was actually able to talk to a sovereign as an equal. Countless people shook their heads and laughed bitterly, somewhat self-deprecatingly. Long Chen glanced at Emo Xian and replied in a deep voice, "Your son raised humans under the imperial palace and even wanted to kill my divine general. Today I can spare his life. However, he can't leave the desolate snake prison. The grudge between us ends here." Long Chen knew the purpose of this trip. If he became enemies with the desolate snake prison, it would be no different from multiplying the difficulty by several times. What if I don't agree? Do you think you can still leave this ghost metropolis after killing my son? Emo Xian's eyes were like lightning, and his cold laughter made people tremble in fear. You can try. Chapter 648. Kill. In the end, everyone was sweating profusely, and a chill ran down their spines. They couldn't help but stare at Long Chen. He was currently facing a yin-yang realm sovereign. His words showed that he wasn't afraid of death. However, Long Chen looked at Emo Xian without fear. Emo Xian stared at Long Chen for a while, then finally smiled and said, "Send my son over, and we'll pretend this never happened." Emo Xian's soul heaved a sigh of relief. Then, he felt Long Chen release his soul. The pressure around him disappeared, and he immediately charged toward Emo Xian. The fear in his eyes gradually turned into a ferocious look, seeing that he had already landed on Emo Xian's enormous body. He sneered and said coldly, "Do you think you can walk out of this ghost city alive? You destroyed my body today, so I must kill you." As Emo Xian spoke, his soul faintly showed signs of merging with Emo Xian's body. His feet had just touched Emo Xian's body when he was about to sink into it. At this moment, "I gave you a way out." A sigh sounded. Long Chen shook his head slightly. Bang, 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 bang. Emo Xian's eyes were filled with fear. His soul was disintegrating at a speed visible to the naked eye. "Father, save me!" Rays of yin-yang qi shot out of Emo Xian's eyes, accompanied by boundless divine consciousness, and rushed toward Emo Xian's soul. However, in less than 2 breaths, Emo Xian was reduced to ashes. Buzz! The surroundings were completely silent. No one had expected such a sudden turn of events. Emo Xian was dead. He had died in front of Emo Xian. Black and white chi rose and fell on Emo Xian's enormous body. He turned around and glared at Emo Xian. You left a soul in his body, but how can you have such powerful divine consciousness? Even my divine consciousness couldn't detect it, let alone block it. Before Long Chen could reply, the people in all directions had already retreated rapidly, wanting to get away from this place. However, Long Chen still had no intention of retreating. He stared at Emo Xian's gigantic body, shook his head, and said, "If your true body had come, perhaps you would have been able to resist for a while. However, this is just a clone and an illusion python. They are nothing. Although the rules of the ninth underworld are very different from those of the outside world, even if you are a yin-yang realm master, it is impossible for you to cross such a long distance and come here in such a short time." This was why Long Chen did not hesitate to have Demon Snake contact Dark Demon. He knew that the real Dark Demon would not arrive anytime soon. When Emo Xian tore through space and appeared, he knew that it was just a puppet. Hearing this, Emo Xian sneered and said coldly, "Fantasy Python, I didn't expect a person from the heaven domain like you to know about the Fantasy Python. The strength of your divine sense has indeed exceeded my expectations. However, since you killed my son today, I will not let you leave alive." Long Chen snorted coldly and said, "I gave him a chance, but you allowed him to control this fantasy python to kill me. Whether I killed him or not, what difference does the result make now?" Since it had come to this point, there was no room for negotiation. In fact, from the moment Demon Snake's feet landed on the fantasy python's body, Long Chen knew that his trip would not be easy. In his previous life, he had offended Emo Xian, but in this life, the result was still the same. It seemed that he could not avoid it. This was fate. Emo Xian stared coldly at Long Chen and said coldly, "You are just a group of lowly female humans. So what if you raised them? If you can live past today, you can come to my Demon Snake domain to take a look. However, today, I would like to see whether such a young master like you can fight against my fantasy python clone." As Emo Xian's voice fell, 2 arms appeared on the giant python's body. However, these arms were still extremely large. The head of a human, the body of a snake, and the arms of a human. Such a scene was extremely strange. Emo Xian grabbed at the air with both hands, and the yin and yang energy seemed to be pulled and attacked the place where his hands landed. Yin-yang immortal technique, origin-breaking demonic spear. Boundless demonic chi turned into yin and yang energy and instantly broke through the air. The entire 9th Demon City's walls were crushed into powder at a speed visible to the naked eye. This scene was extremely strange. It was as if under the yin and yang energy, everything turned into nothingness, and there was not even a trace of sound. When Long Chen saw this, he snorted coldly but did not take a step back. He unfolded the Nirvana fire domain and faced it head-on. The sky was filled with black and white spear shadows, like shooting stars, leaving behind countless streaks of light in the sky. The sound of the spear breaking through the sky pierced through the sky and instantly engulfed Long Chen. Seeing this, Big Dipper Phoenix and the others were stunned. Their eyes were fixed on the many human women and witches in the underground palace. This was why Long Chen could not retreat, send them out. Big Dipper Phoenix's divine light shot out and took the lead. Big Dipper Phoenix's cultivation level might not be the highest among them, but her battle prowess was most likely the strongest. Her physical body was formed by Long Chen's strange laws from the domain steel. Her battle prowess was definitely not as simple as it appeared on the surface. At the very least, her potential was definitely not the same as before. The few of them rushed out one after another. With Long Chen blocking Emo Xian's attack, the pressure on them was greatly reduced. Even so, the pressure of the yin-yang realm made them feel as if they were carrying a huge mountain on their back. Bang! After more than 10 breaths, when they looked up, they saw that Long Chen's sword had been unsheathed, and the blade of his sword had pierced Emo Xian's huge python body. Illusionary snakes are just beasts after all, Long Chen shouted coldly. He raised the sacred weapon in his hand from top to bottom, and the brilliance blasted the snake body into pieces. Huan Shi died, and in its place was a pitch-black snake shadow. The snake shadow had a pair of black and white eyes that stared at Long Chen. Emo Xian's voice came from the pitch-black snake shadow. He hissed, I didn't expect, you, a Nirvana realm cultivator, to have reached the transformative stage of the yin-yang immortal technique. If my true body had come today, you would have died without a doubt. Emo Xian looked deeply at the sword in Long Chen's hand. With Long Chen's Nirvana realm cultivation, it was impossible for him to defeat Emo Xian in such a short time, even with the transformative stage of the yin-yang immortal technique. At least 70% of the reason Emo Xian was defeated was because of Long Chen's sword. That was a sacred weapon. A saint-level sword had never appeared even on the saint weapon ranking. However, Emo Xian faintly felt that the sword was not as simple as it seemed. I, Emo Xian, will remember what happened today. One day, my true body will repay this debt with interest. After saying that, Emo Xian's soul transformed into a pitch-black snake shadow and flew into the distance. In that case, it's better for you to leave your soul behind. Chapter 649. Ice in the Water. The light around them had already separated from the black and white. Everyone stared at the sky in a daze. They could not believe that the battle had ended just like that, and Long Chen had won. How is this possible? No matter how much of a genius he is, it's impossible for a Nirvana realm cultivator to defeat a yin-yang realm cultivator. This isn't Emo Xian's true body, but this avatar has at least 1/100th of his power. Even so, isn't he defeated too quickly? What is he doing? Is he trying to capture Emo Xian's soul? Cries of shock rang out incessantly. After Long Chen killed Emo Xian, he actually attacked Emo Xian. You overestimate yourself. Even if it's an avatar, I'm still yin-yang. How is this possible? Emo Xian's avatar cried out. The pitch-black snake soul fell toward Long Chen's palm at a speed visible to the naked eye. He knew that Long Chen's soul was strong. However, he did not expect Long Chen's soul to be so strong. He could actually capture him by force. Emo Xian's avatar saw that Long Chen was about to capture him and cried out, You're only a Nirvana realm cultivator, but your soul's power has already reached the heavens. Bang! Before he finished speaking, he had already turned into green smoke and floated out of Long Chen's palm. Everyone was stunned. Emo Xian's avatar had been crushed by Long Chen just like that. Long Chen turned around and looked at the blood essence bone nurturing road and the people in the city. He said coldly, Get out, all of you. As soon as he said that, everyone rushed toward the exit of Ghost Capital like a tsunami. Some also rushed into the 9th underworld. In less than 100 breaths, the entire Ghost Capital in the 9th domain was empty. The white bones on the blood essence bone nurturing road had all disappeared without a trace. Apparently, the other Ghost Capitals had also noticed the abnormality in this place and were afraid of attracting trouble. Emo Xian's avatar was not the only one that had died. Emo Xian was one of the 4 overlords of the 9th underworld. Seeing that everyone had left, the entire ghost city had become an empty city. Long Chen said to Bai Dufeng and the others, You guys take those witches and women away from here. Ordinary people can just send them to human cities to settle down. Leave those witches to Baian, or find a way to send them to the 9th heaven, otherwise, they will only be more miserable. The Big Dipper Phoenix was a woman, so she naturally understood what Long Chen meant. It was fine if it was a human woman. Once those demonesses entered the human heaven domain, with their cultivation, they could only become slaves. There was no fairness in this world. When a man was stronger than a woman, it was even more unfair. Seeing that the Big Dipper Phoenix had agreed, Long Chen continued helplessly, "Originally, I wanted to bring all of you into the ninth underworld and use the opportunities here and the flow of time to stimulate your potential, but now it seems that I can't. Now, Xian Mo definitely sees me as a thorn in his side. It's too dangerous for you to follow me with your cultivation." After Long Chen finished speaking, he did not hesitate at all. He did not even wait for Beidufeng to reply. He directly rushed to the end of the city, disappearing from the ghost capital. Beidufeng and the others looked at Long Chen's departure, glanced at each other, and also left the ghost capital, returning to the ninth heaven. After leaving the ninth heaven, they quickly contacted Bai An and handed all the women to him. Immediately afterward, led by Beidufeng and Yu Zhan, everyone stepped into the ghost capital again. When they stepped into the ghost capital, this place was no longer the same as when Long Chen left. The original city lord has been replaced, and the broken city has been repaired. Beidufeng glanced at them and said in a deep voice, "The 6 of us will form groups of 2 and take care of each other. 1 year later, we will meet in the ninth heaven. Life and death are predestined. Life and death are predestined. Life and death are predestined." After that, each of them once again embarked on the path of blood essence cultivation. They only stayed in the outside world for a day, but in the ghost capital and the ninth underworld, 100 days have passed. This is also the reason why people from the 10 heavens want to enter the ghost capital and the ninth underworld. On the other side, these people were conferred the title of divine generals by him. Therefore, as soon as they stepped into the ninth underworld, Long Chen felt something in his heart. "Since you have chosen this path, then walk it well," Long Chen muttered to himself and continued to walk forward. Around him were dozens of corpses. Each of these corpses was as thin as a match, and their faces were ferocious. They were all humans who died in the ninth underworld, but at this moment they didn't look like skeletons. This is because they were all possessed by the devil. The laws of the ninth underworld are very different from those of the 10 heavens. This place may be full of endless opportunities, but it is also full of death. Innate demonic energy has replaced the innate purple energy. If one is careless during cultivation, the danger of the heart demon will be thousands of times higher than the outside world, and they will eventually turn crazy and die. Long Chen came here to find the ice of quiet water. The ice of quiet water, the frost of the cold moon, and the ice python bone. These 3 things weren't deceived by demonic snake. After some inquiries, they were indeed necessary to obtain the ninth underworld fire. However, demonic snake only had the frost of the cold moon, and didn't have the ice python bone or the ice of quiet water. At least, he didn't have them in his storage ring. The ice of quiet water. This was a trace of cold energy left in the dantian of a human after they turned crazy. However, it wasn't easy to turn this cold energy into the ice of quiet water. In the past 100 days, Long Chen had already searched through 4 cities. He had also seen too many humans die from madness. After a short investigation, Long Chen flew into the distance again. That day, after Long Chen killed Mo Xian's avatar, he ordered everyone to leave, which seemed to have some effect. Most people thought he had returned to the 10 heavens domain, and Mo Xian in the desolate snake prison might be among them. At least in the past 100 days, Long Chen wasn't disturbed at all. However, to find a human in the ninth underworld was as difficult as ascending to the heavens. After all, humans who entered the ninth underworld were just skeletons on the surface. In comparison, the devils were much easier to recognize. Long Chen's speed was extremely fast, rushing all the way to the next city. In the past 100 days, he hadn't ventured deep into the ninth underworld. After all, the deeper he went, the fewer humans there would be, and the chances of obtaining the spectral weapon would be much smaller. Buzz. Long Chen's body suddenly stopped, and he froze in the air. This was because 10,000 meters away from him, there were two groups of people chasing each other, and at least 10 of them were gradually entering the demonic realm. "Aren't you going to take a look?" A cold voice came from beside Long Chen. The person who spoke was the sword spirit woman. She was originally a sword spirit, but now she had a physical body. "Of course I'm going to take a look, but next time you come out, can you say hello?" Long Chen said, shaking his head. Long Chen had been to many places these days. Chapter 650. Sky of Freedom, the Ninth Netherworld. Desolate snake prison, among thousands of snake beasts. Emo Xian's face suddenly turned cold, and he said in a deep voice, "You mean that Long Chen didn't return to 10 Directions Heaven, but came to the Ninth Netherworld?" "Yes, but Subordinate has one more thing to report to Master. This Long Chen is the disciple of the Transcending Sovereign," a snake demon said respectfully. Emo Xian frowned suddenly, and after a moment of silence, he said, "This person killed my son and made me lose face in the Ninth Heaven. I can't let this matter go. Investigate, tell me all the information about this person, and find out where he is in the Netherworld." On the other side, Long Chen and the Sword Spirit moved one after the other, rushing towards the two groups of people. Long Chen and the Sword Spirit hid their figures. Both of them clearly perceived that the two groups of people had entered a state of madness. At this moment, the demonic aura around their bodies condensed and didn't dissipate. Long Chen shook his head slightly. These people's minds aren't strong enough. Once they enter a state of madness, even their minds will be greatly affected. Entering the Ninth Netherworld under such circumstances is simply courting death. Bang! 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 The two groups of people were evenly matched, but after the demonic aura multiplied their combat power, they were able to go all out, disregarding life and death. Soon, the victor was decided. In the blink of an eye, only a dozen or so people were left alive. But at this moment, Long Chen and the Sword Spirit's eyes lit up. The remaining dozen or so people all stopped attacking, and the demonic aura around their bodies began to dissipate at a speed visible to the naked eye. Immediately afterward, several people walked towards the corpses on the ground. Blue energy was extracted from the corpses, and finally condensed into light blue water droplets. The power of cold. Long Chen's pupils shrank suddenly, and the Sword Spirit nodded slightly. Long Chen had been searching for 100 days, and now he finally saw a glimmer of possibility of obtaining the ice of cold water. The Sword Spirit's figure moved, and she was about to rush out to deal with these people and snatch the power of cold. However, Long Chen didn't seem to have any intention of attacking. He even stretched out his hand to stop the Sword Spirit. These people's strength is average, and their minds are definitely not strong enough to control the demonic qi. However, they can be like a demonic qi for a short period of time. Furthermore, each of the dead people has a cold power on their bodies. Don't act rashly. Moreover, the chilling power in their bodies may not be able to condense the chilling water ice. Long Chen's words made the Sword Spirit woman stop in her tracks. She snorted coldly. Although Long Chen was now in the form of a skeleton, his strength and spirit sense hadn't changed in the slightest. On the contrary, the Sword Spirit woman seemed to have transformed into a human, almost no different from an ordinary person. Even Long Chen couldn't tell whether she had a cultivation base or not. However, during this period of time, no one in the Earth's celestial stage was a match for her. They're leaving. That's White Bones City. They should be going there, the Sword Spirit said coldly. Long Chen nodded and took the lead to follow him. Although the Sword Spirit woman's words were cold, ever since Long Chen had stepped into the Ninth Netherworld and confirmed that Long Chen was looking for the materials to refine equipment, she had acted unusually. She was also acting out of character. She was even more concerned about this matter than Long Chen. Although Long Chen didn't know the reason, he didn't ask too much. After all, Now that he had a sword spirit to help him, it would save him a lot of trouble. As the remaining 10 or so people entered the White Bone City, less than 30% of the White Bone race's people had fleshly bodies. However, this city was extraordinarily lively. Demonic tattoo green, only 3 demonic refining stones. Fair trade. Purple crystal dagger, ranked 250th on the divine weapon ranking, 100 demonic refining stones. Fixed price. Demonic refining pill, 30 demonic refining stones. The sound of hawking continued. White Bone City belonged to the Netherworld. Within the city, there were prohibitions issued by the Lord of the Netherworld. Within the city was a safe zone, and no fighting was allowed. Otherwise, no matter whether it was the human clan or the demon clan, only death awaited. The Lord of the Netherworld was also the Netherworld King of the Netherworld. His words were an ironclad order. At least in the Netherworld, there had never been a fight because no one dared to challenge the Netherworld King. Long Chen couldn't help but laugh and shake his head. These hawkers were actually people who were nearing the end of their lifespans. Many of them couldn't refine the demonic chi for a long time. Therefore, they needed a type of ore called the demonic refining stone. This item was somewhat similar to a spirit stone. It could greatly reduce the intensity of the demonic chi. These people who were nearing the end of their lifespans and didn't have a high mental state could live in the demon world cities for a long time through this item. In the outside world, people could only live for a year, but in the netherworld they could live for 100 years. Although they couldn't increase their cultivation, they were happy to live in the demon world cities. Following the main street, Long Chen followed the group of people and turned dozens of streets before finally stopping. The sword spirit woman's appearance was extraordinary. Therefore, she turned into a sword spirit and hid in the divine weapon. Long Chen relied on his own cultivation. These people didn't notice him at all. At this moment, these people all stopped in front of a dilapidated temple. The temple covered an area of 1,000 square meters. As far as the eye could see, half of it had already collapsed. Filthy yellow cloth hung from the walls. It was riddled with holes. More than 10 people knelt in front of the temple door with pious looks on their faces. Everyone's hands were raised above their heads. It was as if they were worshipping a god. Long Chen had a strange expression on his face. Using his divine perception, he found that this temple was enveloped by an invisible aura. He couldn't detect anything. More than 10 people knelt on the ground with their hands above their head. They were offering the power of cold. A withered hand slowly stretched out from the gap in the door. It gradually landed on the heads of the people. Streams of cold energy disappeared from the fingertip. Buzz. As the cold energy was absorbed, streams of light appeared from the fingertips of the hand and landed on the heads of the people. Thank you for the blessings of the carefree heavens. Thank you for the blessings of the carefree heavens. Carefree heavens? Long Chen's eyebrows were filled with doubt. These people were actually worshipping the people of this temple. Could it be that there was a sovereign realm expert inside who had built a statue of a god? More than 10 people bowed and retreated. They left the temple. Every one of them seemed to be very comfortable. Their faces were filled with excitement. The leader said, "There are many new humans in the north of the city. We will go and bring them here." Of course. It's a pity for the brothers who died today. Senior brother, you don't have to be like this. Since we believe in the God of freedom, we have already disregarded life and death. Moreover, if not for this belief, we would have died long ago. When Long Chen heard their words, he became more and more curious. Who exactly was this God of freedom? Regardless of who this person was, he definitely had the ice of quiet water in his hands. These people were continuously providing him with cold energy. Chapter 651. Spellfire flower. In the northern part of the city, the skeleton was covered in pitch-black veins. These patterns were not inscriptions, but were formed by demonic chi, which was also known as demonic poison. Magic poison. It was something that everyone who entered the ninth underworld would come into contact with. The clash of innate demonic chi and immortal chi resulted in this situation. Even though these humans were only skeletons, Lin Fan could tell that they were trembling uncontrollably right now. "TSK, they are all newcomers. Which heaven are they in? You must have died a lot on the way." A middle-aged man whose body was half a skeleton came forward. The man's appearance was quite frightening, and all of the humans who had just arrived unconsciously took half a step back. The middle-aged man stretched out his left bony finger and pointed at everyone. He said, "There are 38 Earth Celestial Stage Cultivators, 9 Heaven Celestial Stage Cultivators, and 50 Virtual Celestial Stage Cultivators. There are 80 people infected with the demonic poison. 30 of them can't take it anymore, and 2 of them, bang bang." Before this person could finish his words, the 2 skeletons in the crowd began to expand rapidly. From time to time, he would transform into a human, and from time to time, he would transform into a skeleton. It was as if he was enduring an unprecedented pain. In the next breath, their physical bodies directly exploded, like a blooming blood-colored flower in the sky. Countless immortal powers were even more dazzling in the underworld. Devil Flame Flower. Such a beautiful scene was called the demonic flame flower by the native demons of the underworld. This name was also very beautiful. There are 2 more people who are about to blossom. The middle-aged man's half-human face revealed a terrifying smile as he continued his original words. Long Chun turned his body slightly and stood beside the 2 people who had self-destructed. Every day, countless people entered the ninth underworld, but the number of people who died was also countless. The Nether King had once said something that made the Devil Clan and the 10 Directions Heaven domain sigh endlessly. Now, many cities in the ninth underworld took it as a warning to countless humans who had ventured deep into the ninth underworld. A cycle in the underworld is like 100 years, and 100 years in the Devil Land is like a chain. The void in the sky is all creation, and all the flowers under the beauty are flames. In the underworld, 100 years was 1 year in the 10 Directions celestial domains. Countless experts and geniuses wanted to enter this place. However, after entering, they were bound by the power of the underworld within 100 years. Many of them had even been assimilated by the demon clan. The netherworld was filled with boundless fortune, but in reality, it was also filled with bloodshed. Every day, the devil flame flower bloomed countless times, and the people who died were all geniuses from the 10 Directions celestial domain. Long Chin watched as the flames in the sky dissipated. Not even his soul was left behind. He couldn't help but shake his head. He couldn't help but worry for Big Dipper Phoenix and the others. Originally, Long Churn had brought them here to gain experience and grow as fast as possible. However, after offending Mo Xian, he gave up on that idea. Now that he wasn't by their side, Big Dipper Phoenix and the others were in even greater danger. While Long Chen was deep in thought, more than 10 people had already walked over. Although these dozen or so people had already transformed into human form, Long Churn could still identify the aura on their bodies. They were the few people from before. On their waists was a jade pendant as black as ink. This jade was also known as the Devil Transformation Jade. Its effect was to use the pure devil chi that it emitted to create a physical body for humans, which was no different from being in the 10 Directions celestial domain. However, very few people used this item because the price was not low. After the few people walked over, the middle-aged man with half of his body immediately shouted to the crowd, "Hurry up, hurry up. Those who want to live, stand here. Stand neatly." Just like that, nearly 100 people lined up at the north gate. Long Chun could even feel the explosive intent from many of them. Nearly half of them were in the Heaven Celestial Stage and Earth Celestial Stage. These people were considered powerhouses in the 10 Directions celestial domain, but now they were being ordered around like idiots. The middle-aged man seemed to have seen through their intentions, but he didn't care at all. He only shouted, "The devil poison can be cured, but from today onwards, you can only leave when you can pay 100 devil stones." Swish, swish, swish. A few people who were not poisoned immediately left the group and wanted to enter the city. Among them, there were 4 Heaven Celestial Stage powerhouses and 4 Peak Earth Celestial Stage powerhouses. The middle-aged man only glanced at them, but he was stopped. It seemed that as long as they weren't poisoned, he didn't care. Long Chen's current cultivation was only in the Heaven Celestial Stage, and he wasn't poisoned. However, he didn't leave. He still stood there with the other 5 Heaven Celestial Stage powerhouses. The dozen people had already walked over. After looking around, they said directly, "This group of people who are in the Earth Celestial Stage and above, follow us. Those who aren't poisoned can come too. I'll help you get rid of the devil poison later and arrange a place to stay." As soon as he finished speaking, the leader waved his hand and threw 3 big bags of items to the middle-aged man. It was obvious that this wasn't his first transaction. The middle-aged man thanked him profusely and shouted to the crowd, "You're in luck." The middle-aged man took away the virtual celestial stage powerhouses, and the rest of them looked at each other. They had no choice but to submit at this moment. Otherwise, they would definitely die if the devil poison broke out. One of the dozen people walked out, and a string of Buddhist prayer beads appeared in his hand. The Buddhist prayer beads rotated and rose into the air. It expanded with the wind, and rays of golden light covered everyone. Under the golden light, the devil poison veins retreated like a tide. The leader of the group was a young man with red lips and white teeth. He looked at the crowd with a benevolent expression and said, "The devil poison has been removed. You can leave on your own. However, it's difficult to survive alone in the 9th netherworld. If you're willing, you'd better follow me." After he finished speaking, he put away the Buddhist prayer beads and turned around to leave with the others. Many people seemed to be stunned by this scene. They didn't expect the devil poison to be removed just like that. They're right. The netherworld is too strange. Although there are many opportunities, there are dangers everywhere. We must find someone who can lead the way. I've received news that another group of people accidentally stepped into the desolate snake domain. They're all dead. Humph, the desolate snake prison? If you've been to the purgatory, you'll know that death might be a good thing. Swoosh. Only 2 or 3 people chose to leave. After a short discussion, most of them chose to follow the dozen people. Long Chen was one of them. Just as Long Chen had expected, the dozen or so people brought everyone back to the front of the temple. Now they were standing in front of the temple and looking at the name of the temple. It said, "Heaven of Transformation. Everyone, follow me into the temple." Everyone entered one by one. There was no fear in numbers. However, when Long Chen reached the doorstep, he subconsciously stopped in his tracks. His pupils suddenly shrank, but they returned to normal in the next moment. At this moment, he was certain that there was indeed a sovereign powerhouse here. Moreover, it was very likely that this person had built a statue or even a divine kingdom. Chapter 652. Unrestrained Heavenly Demons. Scripture. Inside the temple. The moment everyone entered, the originally dilapidated door was tightly shut, and it seemed to be covered in golden light. In front of the dozens of people, there were rows and rows of rooms with an antique feel. Looking left and right, there were at least a dozen rooms, a total of 9 rows. Every room was golden and dazzling, and it was very different from the temple's appearance. It was as if there were top-grade spirit stones wrapped in the soil. What surprised everyone the most was the hall 100 meters in front of them. The hall was empty, and there was only a Buddha statue. The entire body of the Buddha statue was golden in color and contained a faint divine light. However, there were cracks that extended from the center of its brows all the way to its feet. It was actually a god statue. It was formed by a sovereign realm god, which meant that there was a sovereign realm expert here. One had to know that in the entire 10 directions celestial domain, the number of sovereigns who had condensed a god statue could be counted on 2 hands. Wanting to create a god statue in the netherworld was a fool's dream. The sovereigns of the devil race created devil statues. For example, Mo Xian, a yin-yang realm sovereign, had a devil statue of the snake emperor in the desolate snake prison, and his god was worshipped by the entire desolate snake prison. He was also the faith of the desolate snake prison. It was the same for the other 3 domains. In the netherworld, the netherworld king was in charge of the land. Creating a god statue was tantamount to snatching food from the tiger's mouth, grasping the power of faith. Welcome all the laws of the world, understand the desires of heaven and earth, respectfully welcome the great unrestrained sky. Welcome all the laws of the world, voices of praise rang out, and the figures in the rooms flashed and gradually walked out. Everyone had an incomparable future, and they clasped their hands above their heads. Above their heads, brilliance surged and intertwined with each other, as if supporting the sky. The people around Long Chen subconsciously retreated, but they found that there was no door behind them. It was as if they were in another vast space, and there was no way to retreat. Fearless, fearless, a low ringing sound came from the mouth of the Buddha statue like a bell. The people who were retreating with fear on their faces suddenly stopped in their track. Long Chen's pupils suddenly shrank, and he retreated to the back of the crowd. He saw with his own eyes that the god statue had come alive, and that sound came from its mouth. With these words, everyone actually calmed down, as if they had really lost their fear. A man wearing a bright red cassock with golden threads and holding a 9-ringed staff slowly walked out of the crowd. He held the staff in his left hand and put his right hand together. His eyes were clear and bright. Benefactors, you don't have to be like this. The door has always been behind you. If you want to leave, you can naturally leave. However, there are many karma in this world. Why don't you find the longevity heaven? After he finished speaking, he bowed slightly. The 9-ringed scepter in his hand trembled incessantly. It was as if someone was violently striking it, producing a bell sound. The people around Long Chen looked at each other in dismay. His eyes, which were originally filled with all kinds of emotions, were now unprecedentedly clear. Plop, plop. Everyone clasped their hands together and raised them above their heads, murmuring, "We are willing to enter the Mahasvara, cut off all desires in the world, and obtain the myriad of arts in the world. I'm willing to enter the Mahasvara and break the world." Long Chen's divine body didn't appear. He used all of his strength to protect his divine soul. But when he put his palms together towards the sky and spoke like everyone else, he felt his divine body tremble. The 7 emotions and 6 desires in his heart burned fiercely like raging flames. Buzz. In Long Chen's mind, the dragon palace trembled. A dragon's roar suppressed his divine body's uneasiness. Looking up, he saw that there was actually a pitch-black statue slowly condensing above everyone. This statue was completely different from the Buddha statue. Its body was like a rugged rock, covered with barbs and scales that were fiery red like flames. On its back, there were sharp blades that were like mountain peaks that pierced the sky. Below its body there were 3 legs. The most terrifying part was its head. Although this head had the appearance of a Buddha statue, it didn't appear dignified at all. This was because its head was extremely large and there were a total of 13 faces on it. The expression of each face was different. They actually corresponded to the 7 emotions and 6 desires. The demonic aura of the demonic god's 13 faces fell and enveloped everyone. For a moment, Long Chen and everyone else seemed to have sunk into a pitch-black ocean. In a short span of 3 breaths, the demonic aura had already dispersed. Long Chen only felt that this place was too strange. He didn't dare to spread out his divine consciousness rashly. He only took a casual look and his heart was immediately shaken. These people, in a short span of 3 breaths, could actually breathe in and out demonic aura. Long Chen recalled the appearance of the more than 10 people previously. They could enter the demonic state at any time and could also suppress the demonic intent at will and return to their original state. Long Chen's body suddenly stiffened. Suddenly, an image appeared in his mind. In the image, there was an endless stretch of ruins. The sky was filled with pitch-black demonic aura. There was only a vast palace left with broken walls in the center of the image. There was a plaque that was 100 meters long and wide. The plaque was shattered and only 3 fragments were left. There were engravings on the fragments. The engravings were countless devout people who were like stars surrounding the moon. It was exactly the same as the current scene. This palace was the ruins of the King of Hell's palace. It was also the place where the King of Hell once fought with the 10 Directions' celestial ruler. The King of Hell won that battle. And now, the King of Hell's palace was once again built at the eastern border of the Nether Realm. Unrestrained heavenly demon scripture. At this moment, Long Chen finally overlapped this place with the memory in his mind. The first secret scripture of the 9th Netherworld, the unrestrained heavenly demon scripture. Long Chen had once seen this scripture in the hands of a transcendent ruler. The general outline of the secret scripture was a Buddha statue. The Buddha statue and the demon statue must be closely related to this scripture. Could it be that the ruler here was the King of Hell? Long Chen couldn't help but take a deep breath. His eyes were unprecedentedly solemn. The demon statue had already dissipated, but the Buddha statue in front of the courtyard was still there. It was solemn and sacred. His eyes had unknowingly passed through the crowd and landed on Long Chen. "Thou, why are you unwilling to convert? There is fear in your heart." The Buddha statue's voice was like thunder, dispersing everything. In a flash, the crowd dispersed to both sides. Long Chen's figure appeared in front of everyone. The person holding the scepter and wearing the kasaya slowly walked over with a peaceful smile on his face. In the end, he stopped in front of Long Chen, but it was only a meter away. "Benefactor, you have doubts in your heart. My lord invites you into the palace to purify the demon in your heart." The person behind him was like a tide, like the morning sun. Long Chen snorted coldly and suddenly retreated. The long sword in his hand had already been unsheathed. The unsheathed sword was a holy weapon. "Sorry for disturbing you today. I'll take my leave now." Long Chen turned into a long rainbow and slashed out with his sword. The sword radiance from his left and right slashed across the sky and blasted toward the Buddha statue. "Amitabha, since you've entered the Buddhist sect, you don't have to listen to the Dharma." The person wearing the kasaya threw the scepter in his hand. 9 golden rings shot up into the sky and flew toward Long Chen. At the same time, he put his palms together and rapidly formed a seal. Boundless golden light forcibly dispersed the 2 sword radiances from Long Chen. Chapter 653. Lai Rumble. The Buddha statue stretched out its hand and grabbed at Long Chen. Long Chen couldn't avoid it. His feet suddenly stopped, and he waved his holy sword to meet it head-on. The divine statue behind Long Chen expanded and emitted resplendent light. The nirvana flame domain around him rose with the sword. The Buddha statue shattered into pieces. The Buddha statue dissipated. Long Chen and the man in the white kasaya were still standing in the same place, but he didn't have any intention of attacking. "Benefactor, you're in the nirvana realm and you're blessed with good fortune. The weapon in your hand is also a holy sword." The man paused and said, "Today, I can't defeat you." Long Chen didn't relax at all. He knew that the danger here wasn't the man in the kasaya, but the Buddha statue. Although this was the Nether Realm, the Nether King should be in the Nether King Palace. Why was he here? If the person here wasn't the Nether King, then who had the unrestrained heavenly demon scripture, Long Chen was very confused, but he was also very afraid. This was also the reason why he didn't want to set foot in the nether realm in his previous life. The nether realm was too strange. Even sovereigns couldn't run amok there. If you're done, please open the door. I'll leave. Long Chen felt uneasy. Dong, dong, dong. A series of loud chimes suddenly rang out from the temple. Everyone once again revealed a pious expression and put their palms together above their heads. Even the man in the kasaya was the same. The cracked Buddha statue in the temple slowly stood up. The golden light on its body was restrained, and its eyes were solemn. He slowly walked out. Every step he took seemed to cause the space to tremble. The pair of golden eyes fell on Long Chen. However, Long Chen saw the darkness under the golden light from a crack in the statue. The face was like a Buddha, but the inside was like a demon. In ancient times, Buddhism spread throughout the 10 directions celestial realm. They were called Buddhist cultivators. It was rumored that the unrestrained heavenly demon scripture was written by a Buddhist disciple. In the short span of 10,000 years, Buddhism had completely disappeared from history for some unknown reason. Only a few sovereigns knew about it, and no one even mentioned it anymore. Benefactor, since you're unwilling to enter, I'll go out and welcome you. The Buddha statue's voice was like the sound of Sanskrit, as if it could dispel all distracting thoughts. Long Chen stood in place, knowing that it would not be easy to leave today. Long Chen stared at the Buddha statue and said in a deep voice, "Since you have come out, why don't I listen to your teachings? The so-called all-Dharma is not all Dharma, hence the name all-Dharma." Subhuti was like the growth of a human body. Subhuti spoke. Revered one of the world. For example, the human body grew up. It was the immortal body. It was a great body. Subhuti. It was the same for bodhisattvas. If it were true, I shall exterminate all living beings. Buzz. Just as Long Chen's voice fell, the Buddha statue's Sanskrit chants fell. His voice seemed to have come from the 9 heavens and directly entered the depths of Long Chen's divine soul. It was as if his voice had been imprinted on Long Chen's divine residence. Step by step, sentence by sentence, Long Chen retreated step by step. A wisp of fierceness appeared in the Buddha statue's solemn eyes. At this moment, he was 1 meter in front of Long Chen. After 3 steps, he would be in front of him. Amitabha, this is my Buddha, the man in the kasaya said softly. He recalled the day when Tu Tao came and converted. After that day, the world lost a sovereign and gained a protector of Buddha. But when he finished speaking, he realized that the Buddha statue's step was suspended in the air. The next step was as if it was suspended above a sea of fire. No matter what, it could not land. Long Chen's originally blank eyes suddenly ignited with raging flames. When he opened his mouth, a dragon's roar suppressed the Sanskrit chants. Devil in Buddha? Devil sound Dharma. Unfortunately, I am not afraid of the devil, nor do I worship Buddha. The vast aura around Long Chen was pushed to the extreme. Ripples appeared in the air because of the vibrations. Bang! When Long Chen finished speaking, the god behind him turned into a divine dragon in a flash and tore at the Buddha statue in front of him. The Buddha statue retreated explosively. Another crack appeared on its body, from the bottom of its feet to the bottom of its chest. Benefactor, your Tao heart is very firm. What a powerful god! The Buddha statue stood in its original place and did not attack again. Long Chen did not reply. The people in the surroundings slowly walked toward him. Long Chen stared at the Buddha statue and sneered. I have heard your Dharma. Now I have a few questions. I wonder if your distinguished self can answer. I will tell you everything I know. Long Chen looked at the solemn and sacred Buddha statue. He was a little fearful and also a little disdainful. When the Buddha statue took 3 steps, he knew that its demonic nature had surpassed its Buddha nature. Otherwise, Long Chen would not have been able to break free from the Sanskrit chants so easily. Is the technique you practice the unrestrained heavenly demon scripture? Long Chen asked. Just as Long Chen finished speaking, the people in the surroundings were suddenly surrounded by demonic energy. Even the Buddha statue in front of them seemed to have dimmed a bit. For a moment, Long Chen felt a boundless murderous intent. No, the Buddha statue replied. When Long Chen heard this, the smile on his face became even wider. He continued, since it is not the unrestrained heavenly demon scripture, then you are naturally not the 9th netherworld king who once fought against the rulers of 10 heavens. Naturally, I am not. Is this true? A monk does not lie. After a short conversation, Long Chen could not help but laugh. He stared at the Buddha statue in front of him and felt that it was rather funny. He did not have any intention of leaving. He also did not have a trace of fear. This was because he knew that the Buddha statue in front of him was the 9th netherworld king who once commanded the heavens and earth. Benefactor, why are you laughing? The Buddha statue was as calm as an ancient well. However, Long Chen knew that the Buddha statue would not let him go even if all the people here were killed today. He walked to the main hall in the center of the temple and sat on the praying mat in front of the Buddha statue where it was supposed to be standing. The praying mat was very old and was only made of straw. The Buddha statue stood in the same place and did not turn its head. When Long Chen sat down, it turned its head. The holiness and peace in its eyes disappeared again. It looked at Long Chen's back and walked into the main hall step by step. He had been here for a full 700 years, but today, he met a man he could not see through no matter how hard he tried. It stood in front of Long Chen and turned into a Buddha statue again. It was still full of divine light. However, this time, Long Chen's gaze towards him became even more unbridled. The two of them did not speak for a long time. Benefactor, you know that I will not let you go today. The Buddha statue finally could not hold back. As soon as the words left its mouth, it regretted it. It was not an impatient person. No, no, no. You will let me go and give me something to send me away. Long Chen laughed. Otherwise, once the people of the 4 regions knew that the Nether King wasn't here, the entire 9th underworld would be shaken. Although he had allowed Long Chen to leave, Long Chen had sworn an oath as a god that he would not spread this matter. Furthermore, he would obtain the golden jade flame for the Nether King. 3 years later, if he could break through the unrestrained heavenly demon scripture, he would lead the people of the devil world into the first heaven. Revenge for the past. Far west of the Nether Realm, Netherworld Sea of Flames. It took Long Chen 3 months to reach this place. This place was near the edge of the desolate snake prison, so Long Chen had to go to places where people rarely went. Not only that, during this time, he had to move stealthily more than 10 times, wasting a lot of time. This made him very uneasy. A month after he went to the west, he could clearly feel Zhong Lang's aura. Zhong Lang had been conferred the title of Divine General by him, so as long as he was close enough, he would naturally know his location. However, in the next 2 months, he kept changing directions, as if he was hiding from someone. Long Chen knew that Zhong Lang was most likely being hunted down now. Long Chen was standing at the edge of the Netherworld Sea of Flames, but he could still feel Zhong Lang's aura. He was in this Netherworld Sea of Flames. The Netherworld Sea of Flames was formed by devil flames. It was rumored that there was a devil beast below this place that breathed out devil flames. Of course, this was only a legend. Because this Netherworld Sea of Flames was too big, it was boundless and connected to the sky. The flames rose, but there was not the slightest bit of heat. Instead, there was a heart-palpitating feeling that hit him in the face, straight into his heart. Long Chen closed his eyes. It was as if there was an endless void in front of him. Bang, bang, bang. In the void, there seemed to be a candle light. It was weak but eye-catching. Long Chen could feel Zhong Lang's location. He was in the netherworld sea of flames. Pooh! Long Chen jumped up and fell into the sea. The boundless sea of flames burned fiercely, but Long Chen had already sunk to the bottom of the sea. He could not feel the slightest bit of heat. He could not even feel the slightest bit of flame, as if the netherworld sea of flames did not exist here. It was just an illusion. However, Long Chen knew that this was the netherworld sea of flames. And the 9 underworld sea of flames that he wanted to find was the essence nurtured in this sea. Long Chen's speed was extremely fast. He passed through, the surrounding flames rolled back, turning into waves of ripples. However, after 1,000 meters, Long Chen's speed suddenly slowed down. His eyebrows gradually furrowed. Because he finally knew what the flames in this sea of flames burned. This fire burned the soul. At this moment, his divine sense seemed to be burning. Long Chen waved his hand and took out the ice of quiet water. This ice was obtained from the Netherworld King. Long Chen had checked it many times over these days. There was nothing wrong with it. Immortal power activated. The ice of quiet water instantly turned into streaks of blue smoke that surrounded Long Chen's body. The surrounding flames were forcefully separated, as if they had encountered heaven and earth. However, Long Chen's speed slowed down. When he was about 2,000 meters deep, a ball of blue brilliance appeared in front of him. Within the brilliance, there was a 1,000-meter-long island standing tall. This entire island was in the depths of the Netherworld Sea, and Long Chen's divine sense could not spread out at all here. Once it flew out, it would immediately turn back into ashes. Long Chen took a deep look at this place, then directly turned around. Zhong Lang was not here. A moment after Long Chen left, 2 groups of people ran out from the island in large strides. One of the women even shouted to the people in front of her, "Did you see clearly? That person really has the ice of quiet water, resisting the sea of flames here. How could we be wrong? If you want to go more than 3,000 meters deep into the netherworld sea of flames, you must have this item. If you don't have this item, what's the point of that person continuing to go forward?" The person who spoke was somewhat impatient. However, when the woman threw a bag of devil stones into his hand, he immediately revealed a slight smile. Then, he raised his hand and pointed at the direction Long Chen left, saying, "You guys should chase after him now. You should be able to catch up before he goes 3,000 meters deep. However, I advise you to be careful. There were people from the demonic snake prison who escaped here before. The demonic snake prison is not friendly to the human race." Before he finished speaking, the woman had already led the 2 groups of people out of the formation's light circle, once again entering the netherworld sea of flames. Chapter 655. All for the sake of saving people. Long Chen could not use his divine telekinesis in the netherworld sea of fire, so his speed slowed down. However, when he stepped into the sea for 2,000 meters, he could not see anything other than the countless netherworld sea of fire. It took Long Chen almost a quarter of an hour to traverse 1,000 meters. Just as the person on the island said, Long Chen stopped 3,000 meters away from the shore. The color of the sea of fire had already turned dark red, and the demonic aura was rising from it. It was extremely strange. However, the reason why Long Chen was afraid was because of the fishes that were as thin and long as silk. The color of the fish was extremely bright, and formed a sharp contrast with the dark red sponge. The fish were extremely thin and long as an arm. They had 1 head and 1 tail, and their width was not even as thick as a blade. As they moved, the water rippled, and Long Chen could even hear the sound of air being torn apart. As Long Chen hesitated, the ripples behind him brushed past, and Long Chen suddenly turned his head. He only saw flashes of light 100 meters away, and a few people were moving very quickly, as if they were in a hurry. The woman looked at Long Chen from afar, and before she arrived, she shouted anxiously, "Sir, please wait, I have a favor to ask." Long Chen frowned slightly. Although he knew that these people had no ill intentions, he was afraid that there would be some trouble. Save me! Long Chen hesitated, but he heard Zhong Lang's cry for help from the sea within 3,000 meters. This voice was not divine telekinesis, but a spiritual transmission. Zhong Lang had not been a divine general for long, and now that Long Chen could hear his voice, it proved that he was most likely less than 10,000 meters away. Long Chen's heart tightened. Long Chen knew Zhong Lang's character very well. If it was not a last resort, he would definitely not send out such a cry for help. Long Chen turned and moved, and he had already crossed the 3,000-meter intersection line. As soon as he crossed the line, the thin and long fish beasts suddenly attacked him. However, when the beasts came into contact with the ice, they froze as if they had met their nemesis. However, Long Chen could clearly see that the serene water ice was being consumed rapidly as more and more fish beasts appeared. The woman stood at the intersection, her body flickering with brilliance. She stared at Long Chen with a vexed expression. She pondered for a moment and said, "Rush in and stop him. This is our last chance." As soon as the woman finished speaking, she actually took the lead and rushed into the sea of fire that was 3,000 meters away from the shore. The faces of the people behind her changed drastically as they shouted, "Young miss, you can't!" Unfortunately, the woman had no intention of turning back. Instead, she rushed towards Long Chen at an extremely fast speed. Everyone let out a long sigh and followed closely behind. Whoosh! A series of ear-piercing sounds could be heard. Long Chen could not help but turn around to take a look. His brows immediately furrowed. That woman and the others actually charged at him like crazy. These people did not have the ice of hidden water, but the jade pendants on their waists flashed with a dazzling white light, giving them a temporary defense against the flames here. This item seemed to be some kind of defensive artifact. However, this artifact was obviously more fragile and was far inferior to the ice of hidden water. Fishes tore at them like lightning, and the noise was coming from their bodies. Long Chen paused and waited for them to take two steps. Seeing that the two groups led by the woman were approaching, Long Chen said in a deep voice, "Why are you chasing me?" Everyone paused and the woman's face was filled with joy. She clasped her fists at Long Chen and said, "Please follow me back to the island and sell me the ice of hidden water in your hands." Long Chen looked at the two groups of people that had a total of 20 people. There were even 5 celestial stage cultivators among them. He said coldly, "Sir, they don't look like they're here to buy something." The woman was stunned and looked troubled as she replied, "Don't worry, they're just following me. They have no ill intentions. I asked you for the ice of hidden water to save people." "Save people?" Long Chen did not speak, but the woman spoke again. 10 people from my clan are trapped in the depths of the netherworld sea of fire. Their lives are at stake now. Please save them." Long Chen was stunned and immediately shook his head. "The ice of hidden water in my hands is not enough to save 10 people. Moreover, one of my people is trapped here. Please find someone else." Although Long Chen had a lot of ice of hidden water, it was not easy to find the 9 underworld fire in the depths of the netherworld sea of fire. Without the ice of hidden water, it would be difficult to move around here. Moreover, he had to save Zhong Lang at this moment, so it was impossible for him to hand over all the ice of hidden water to others. Long Chen waved his right hand and threw out the ice of hidden water. He then turned around and left. "These ice of hidden water are a gift from me. The rest is up to fate." After saying that, Long Chen did not look back. The woman looked at the ice of hidden water that was less than the size of a palm in her hand and wanted to chase after Long Chen. However, a sword light rushed out from Long Chen's hand and stirred up the entire sea of fire. When the sea of fire calmed down, Long Chen had disappeared from their sight. "Miss, let's go back quickly. There are already people who can't hold on." With these ice of hidden water, we can save as many people as we can. A middle-aged man said anxiously. The woman shook her head and helplessly turned around to leave with the crowd. The middle-aged man took the ice of hidden water given by Long Chun from the woman's hand and rushed in another direction. Long Chun handed over 20% of the ice of hidden water. He had done his duty and did not feel guilty at all. He had never met these people before. It was enough for him to do so. After traveling for 10,000 meters, Long Chun used the connection between him and the Divine General to look into a huge cave. The cave was as dark as ink. It was some kind of mine that was located in the depths of the Sea of Fire. Zhong Lang was in it. Long Chun did not hesitate and rushed in. The cave above the mine was as wide as two people. After advancing for less than 2 meters, it went straight down like a cliff. The fire here was like the sea. Long Chun had the ice of hidden water on him. He was like a driftwood in a stream, falling down with the current. Buzz. After falling for a while, Long Chun felt that his surroundings suddenly brightened. The fire of hidden hell gradually dimmed, but the demon chi became denser. The surrounding ore walls were in great contrast to the outside world. They were silver-white. Long Chun's eyes fell on the side of the mountain wall. There were streaks of blood rumble. A deafening sound reverberated along the mountain wall. Long Chun's divine sword instantly flew out of his hand and disappeared into the cave in front of him. After moving a few times, Long Chun finally saw Zhong Lang. However, Zhong Lang looked extremely miserable at the moment. He was nailed directly to the mountain wall of the mine. There were 5 dark green pythons under his feet that were devouring his body and blood essence. Chapter 656. Seeking fire. Long Chun's sword slashed out, and the entire mine shook. Under the powerful attack, the surrounding netherworld fire rolled out, leaving an empty space in the mine. The 5 dark green pythons instantly turned into ashes, and the expressions of the 8 people changed drastically, and they all retreated. When the brilliance dissipated, Long Chun was already standing beside Zhong Lang, and he took out the bone spurs from his body. Zhong Lang rolled down from the wall into Long Chun's arms, and he said, "Zhong Lang, no use." Long Chun didn't reply, and he only supported Zhong Lang against the wall behind him. In his previous life, Zhong Lang was a heavenly immortal who could fight against a sovereign, and he was Long Chun's strongest divine general. His current state was not because he was useless. It was because Long Chun had risen too quickly in this life, and their aptitude and potential had yet to be developed. Just like in his previous life, Long Chun and Ao Tsangqiong had stepped into the sovereign realm one after another. But now, Long Chun had already reached the sovereign realm, and Ao Tsangqiong was far from reaching the sovereign realm in his previous life. Moreover, the 8 demons in front of him were all heavenly immortals, and with such strength, ordinary human sovereigns would have to be wary. After all, this was the 9th netherworld, and not the 10 directions celestial domain. The 8 stared at Long Chun, and with a sinister smile, they suddenly rushed out of the mine in all directions, and they actually didn't have any intention of attacking. Long Chun said coldly, "You want to leave just like this?" The light of the gods behind Long Chun spread out, and the 2 heavenly immortals who were a bit slow were immediately smashed into half by the holy sword in his hand. As for the other 6, they had already disappeared in the mine. Long Chun's figure moved, and his left hand instantly shot out rays of divine light, directly smashing the bodies of the 2. The moment their souls appeared, they were caught in his hand, and Long Chun stared at them and said, "You are demons under Mo Xian." The 2 demon souls sneered, and their eyes revealed a bit of ridicule as they stared at Long Chun. One of them even said in a deep voice, "So what if it is? Although you have the support of a transcendent sovereign, this is still the 9th netherworld. 6 divine generals? Just wait to collect their corpses. By the way, my master asked us to pass on a message to you. If you want to save them, feel free to come to the desolate snake prison." Bang! As soon as the 2 of them finished speaking, Long Chen's hand flashed with brilliance and completely shattered their souls. This Xian actually didn't target him, and instead wanted to use the lives of Zhong Lang and the other divine generals to lure him to the desolate snake prison. Long Chen took a deep breath and calmed himself down. The power of creation poured out from the god behind him and landed on Zhong Lang's body. At this moment, Zhong Lang had a devil transformation jade hanging on his waist for some reason. He was in human form. His originally battered body quickly recovered. In just a short span of a breath, Zhong Lang had already stood up. His expression had even returned to normal. This was why Zhong Lang was called the Undead Wolf King in his previous life. His constitution was very special and had a very powerful recovery ability. If it were other divine generals, they would have already been captured by these 7 or 8 people. Only he was able to rush into the netherworld sea of flames and persist until now. Even when Long Chen used the power of creation to restore his body, the loss was extremely small. Zhong Lang stared at Long Chen and said in a deep voice, "Yu Zhan was captured by them. Mu Long and Shen Yu were also captured." After Zhong Lang was conferred the title of Divine General by Long Chen, his intelligence had increased a lot. But when he spoke, he still stuttered a bit. However, Long Chen could hear his words very clearly. Fury and killing intent raged in his heart. This matter couldn't be separated from him. He also couldn't blame Big Dipper Phoenix and the others. Xian was one of the 4 overlords of the 9th netherworld. The power in his hands overflowed the heavens. If he wanted to capture them, it would be too easy. Long Chen nodded and said, "Let's go. I will first send you back to the safe island. The people of the desolate snake prison shouldn't come again for a while." Zhong Lang shook his head and replied, "No need to send me off. This flame can't burn me to death." After saying that, Zhong Lang rushed into the netherworld sea of flames and headed toward the mine tunnel. Long Chen's brows suddenly rose. He saw that Zhong Lang's body had started to recover at a speed visible to the naked eye. If that was all, it wouldn't be a big deal. After all, the netherworld sea of flames didn't target the body, but the soul. But at that moment, Zhong Lang's expression didn't change. His eyes were still as bright as stars. The netherworld sea of flames unexpectedly couldn't burn his soul. Those people of the desolate snake prison definitely had some kind of magic treasure with a high grade on them. That was why they could enter this place. But they had delayed for so long before capturing Zhong Lang. It was most likely because Zhong Lang didn't fear the netherworld sea of flames. "There's no need to go back. Follow me and continue," Long Chen said. Although Long Chen was worried about the Big Dipper Phoenix and the others, he knew that Xian's true target was still him. Xian was afraid of the Sovereign of the Sky-reaching realm, and he didn't dare to cross over to the Nether realm to kill Long Chen. So, he wanted Long Chen to enter the desolate snake prison by himself. Once he entered the desolate snake prison, Xian would probably have many methods to kill Long Chen. But Long Chen couldn't do anything about it. Although his battle prowess was strong and he didn't fear any Nirvana realm sovereign, there was still a big gap between him and Xian. Xian was the Devil Snake Prison's prison master, one of the 4 overlords of the netherworld. His cultivation had already reached the Yin-Yang realm. There was an irreparable gap between the Yin-Yang realm and the Nirvana realm. The biggest difference was the Yin-Yang Qi. The Yin-Yang Qi could use Yin-Yang immortal technique. Even if he only had one of these immortal techniques, Long Chen couldn't defeat Xian. With Long Chen's current Nirvana realm cultivation, he could only use a few moves at most, even with the addition of the power of faith and creation. Long Chen suppressed the killing intent and anger in his heart, then led Zhong Lang deeper into the netherworld sea of flames. When they reached a depth of 100,000 meters, their surroundings were already incomparably quiet, as if they were in a void filled with flames. Apart from the netherworld sea of flames, they couldn't even see a single rock. Even the ground beneath their feet couldn't be seen. The fish had also completely disappeared without a trace, but the flames became even more terrifying. They were like millions of steel needles that constantly pierced towards them. The ice of gloom water around Long Chen's body was visibly being consumed. In comparison, Zhong Lang wasn't in a good state either. Although his soul wasn't corroded by the netherworld sea of flames, his physical body was practically in a bloody mess at all times. Long Chen knew that if the ice of gloom water disappeared, his appearance wouldn't be much better than Zhong Lang's. Although he looked like a skeleton, that was only because of the laws of the netherworld. In reality, the flames would still burn his body and destroy his soul. Chapter 657. Guardian Spirit. Zhong Lang's method was simple. He just closed his eyes. With his eyes closed, he seemed to be feeling every inch of the netherworld fire around him. After a while, he wanted to walk to the left. Long Chen was stunned and followed behind him. Zhong Lang was a wolf. He could feel danger and find it. As they went deeper, Zhong Lang's body was corroding more and more. Even with the help of the magic jade, his bones were slowly showing. However, he didn't even let out a single groan. This time they walked for a full 10 days. After 10 days, Long Chen's ice of quiet water was running out and Zhong Lang's body was only left with bones. "Master, it's below." At this moment, Zhong Lang told Long Chen. Long Chen looked at the flesh on Zhong Lang's body and knew that Zhong Lang was right. If they went further, the power of the netherworld fire would gradually disappear. This meant that this place was the center of the netherworld fire. If they wanted to find the 9 underworld fire, it could only be here. The 9 underworld fire was born from the essence of the netherworld fire. Naturally, it was the center of the fire. Long Chen signaled Zhong Lang to wait for him there, and his body quickly sank down. Zhong Lang did not continue to follow him and continued to go deeper. His body could not take it anymore. Zhong Lang sat cross-legged in the sea of fire. Bursts of aura circulated around his body, and the shadow of a blood wolf appeared behind him. Long Chen slowly fell into the sea of fire. He and Zhong Lang had been walking 100 meters below the sea of fire. Now, he was 1,000 meters below. Gradually, the power of the netherworld fire intertwined like silk threads and finally turned into black lava. This feeling made Long Chen's chest feel heavy. The ice of quiet water separated him from the surrounding area, but now he was like a person who had sunk into a swamp. The lava was as black as ink in all directions and blocked his vision. A ray of divine light appeared on Long Chen's fingertip and slowly passed through the ice of quiet water and fell into the black lava. The next moment, the bones on his fingertip disappeared. There was no pain, no blood, and no feeling. But his outstretched finger had already disappeared. Long Chen couldn't help but take a deep breath, but he had no way out. The only thing left in his mind was the scene of the transcendent ruler's final battle. In this lifetime, he would never kneel in front of this person to acknowledge him as his master. Swoosh! Chang Chen's face suddenly turned cold. He waved the long sword in his hand and the sword radiance shot upwards. Borrowing the recoil, his speed soared. Another 2 days passed. Long Chen stood in the same place in a daze. There was no netherworld flame here. Beneath his feet was a mine. Smoke lingered above the mine. Looking up, the boundless black lava was actually suspended in the sky. Long Chen was stunned for a moment before he was overjoyed. Not only was his expression not surprised, but it was also filled with joy. He knew that he was closer to the 9 underworld flames now. Frost of the cold moon. Long Chen took out the frost of the cold moon. In the next moment, his body completely turned snow-white, and a chill spread in all directions. Without the power of the netherworld flame, Long Chen quickly walked forward. He knew from the Nether King that the 9 underworld flame was inside the extreme Een mine. The extreme een mine was a unique item in the netherworld flame sea. It was extremely cold and een. Only yang could not grow, and only een could not grow. In an extreme een mine, there was only one 9 underworld flame. This was already an iron law of the nether realm. Buzz, buzz. Spirits rushed out of the mine and bit Longchen. In the blink of an eye, they had already covered his body. The frost of the cold moon emitted waves of white fog, and the spirits that got close to him turned into ice shards. Longchen was extremely excited as he tossed and turned. Just as the Nether King said, the extreme east of the mine was the easiest place to see the 9 underworld flame. It was a strange plant, but it was as tall as a person. There were 3 ice flowers on its branches. In the middle of the ice flowers, there was a dark purple flame burning fiercely. This was the 9 underworld flame. To obtain the 9 underworld flame, one could only cut it with the ice python's bone. Although Longchen was extremely excited, he still carefully moved forward with the sacred sword in his hand. According to the Nether King, the 9 underworld flame had a guardian spirit. No one knew what this guardian spirit was. Every time the 9 underworld flame appeared, the guardian spirit would be different. Longchen was already 1 meter away from the 9 underworld flame. He reached out his hand to take the flame, but the guardian spirit did not show any signs of appearing. For the 9 underworld flame, Longchen had come so far without any danger. However, at this last step, Longchen felt that it was too easy to obtain the flame after going deep into the netherworld flame sea. Longchen stood there. The 9 underworld flame was in front of him, but he did not make a move. It was a long wait. There was still no change in the surroundings. Other than the spirits that passed by, this place was even quiet. I can't wait any longer. Longchen's eyes suddenly turned cold. Waiting like this was not a solution. The ice python shackles in his hand instantly flew out, and a cold light streaked across the branches under the 9 underworld flame. The 3 underworld flames fell, and Longchen waved his hand to take them away. However, at this moment, Longchen felt an unprecedented danger. Swallow. On Longchen's arm, the strange flame beast pattern instantly lit up. He actually wanted to take the 3 underworld flames in the nick of time. The 2 9 underworld flames disappeared in the air, followed by an ear-piercing screech. Countless black lights shot out from the 3rd underworld flame, Poochie Poochie. However, in the next moment, Longchen was nailed to the ground. Longchen suddenly realized that the guardian spirit this time was one of the 9 underworld flames. Once he tried to take the flame, he would alarm it and turn it into an evil spirit. Nirvana Flame Domain. The flame domain around Longchen suddenly dispersed, and he forcefully rushed to the ground. However, before he could escape, countless underworld flames engulfed him from all directions. Those who snatch the underworld flames die. A cold voice came from the underworld flames. The sky turned dark. Longchen didn't even have time to use an immortal technique before he felt his soul being forcefully torn apart and leaving his body. He had turned into a ghost in this place. His body was lying alone on the ground, protected by the light of the gods. Buzz. The strange flame beast rushed out of his right arm on its own. Flames lingered around it as it died, as if it was protecting Longchen's body. He kept jumping around Longchen, but he was powerless to do anything. 2 underworld flames appeared again from Longchen's body and fell toward the main trunk of the plant. Do, do, do. The strange flame beast bit one of the underworld flames and swallowed it. However, in the next moment, the underworld flames appeared again from his body. In the end, the 3 underworld flames remained in their original places, as if Longchen had never been there. Longchen looked at this scene in a daze. His soul was unable to return to his body no matter what. Chapter 658. Snake Basin. After turning into a ghost, Long Chen finally understood why there were so many living souls and ghosts in the extreme Yin mine. These people were all people who wanted to obtain the 9 underworld flames. The danger of this fire was far greater than any of the previous ones. Anyone who tried to take the fire would be attacked the moment they tried to do so. Who would have thought that the guardian spirit was actually one of the 3 9 underworld flames? Long Chen's ghost kept falling as if he was falling into a bottomless abyss. He quickly calmed down because he realized that the ghosts around him were in a daze and did not have the slightest bit of clarity. Apart from being unable to return to his body, his divine sense was out of his body, and his divine soul was not restricted at all. Even the ghosts around him subconsciously tried to devour him. Long Chen snorted coldly, and his divine soul engulfed dozens of ghosts around him. This dragon palace has the effect of suppressing souls. Otherwise, I'm afraid I would be no different from these ghosts now, Long Chen muttered to himself. He could still feel the infinite suction force coming from the 9 underworld flames. These 3 flames were using the entire extreme Yin mine as nutrients, including all the ghosts and ghosts in it. After speaking, Long Chen calmed down the uneasiness in his heart. His consciousness sank into the depths of his divine soul, where the Dragon Palace was still. The Dragon Palace was invisible and traceless, and even the primal Chaos Golden Codex had disappeared. However, Long Chen knew that they had completely merged with his divine soul long ago. In the Dragon Palace's main hall, 3 souls and 7 spirits were wandering around in confusion. Long Chen's heart was full of bitterness when he saw this scene. He had the primal Chaos Golden Codex in his hands and could dispel the evil technique on his mother at any time, allowing her to reform her physical body and restore her divine soul. However, Long Chen knew that he could not do that. Once he did that, if the Transcendent Ruler found out, it would be the same as telling him that the primal Chaos Golden Codex was in Long Chen's hands. At that time, not to mention 3 years, everything related to Long Chen would be wiped out within 3 days. Long Chen stared at his mother's 3 souls and 7 spirits, and finally bowed 3 times. He said in a deep voice, 3 years later, whether or not I can kill the Transcendent Ruler, I will protect my mother and my people. After saying that, Long Chen continued to walk deeper into the Dragon Palace. Eventually, he sat down cross-legged in the ancestral Dragon Palace. He wanted to borrow the power of the Dragon Palace to devour the 9 underworlds' fire. Since this fire used the extreme Yin mine and ghosts as nutrients, then if it wanted to return to its body, it would have to sever the connection between the 9 underworld fire and the extreme Yin mine. With Long Chen's current situation, it was impossible for him to do so. However, as long as he could devour the 9 underworld flames and turn the tables, everything would become simple. Long Chen sat cross-legged in the ancestral dragon temple. His spirit had already sensed the mysterious pulling force. Threads that resembled the laws of heaven and earth extended from the roots of the 9 underworld flames to the entire extreme Yin mine, binding countless ghosts. First, I'll devour all these spirits, then I'll seize this extreme Yin mine. On the other hand, the 9 underworld flames are rootless duckweed. As soon as Long Chen's words fell, a dragon-shaped ghost appeared out of thin air in the extreme Yin or mountain, traversing through the entire mine. Every single specter it encountered was devoured in one gulp. On the other side, at the border of the desolate snake prison, which was closest to the netherworld sea of flames, a tall platform was erected on a huge mountain. The platform was made of a type of snow-white camphor wood, and the veined patterns on it resembled countless snake beasts crawling on it. This platform had only been built recently, and it was only 50% complete. However, it had already attracted the attention of many people in the netherworld sea of flames. What's going on? Why did the desolate snake prison build a snake basin altar here? The desolate snake prison is brutal. Now that they've built an altar here, It seems that we should avoid this place as much as possible and look for a new place to settle down. That makes sense. It's really unwise to lose our lives for the ores and spirit items in the netherworld sea of flames. Everyone was discussing spiritedly. In a short period of time, nearly a third of the people rushed out of the safety island closest to the netherworld sea of flames. For a moment, everyone was in a state of panic and wanted to leave the Devil Snake prison as much as possible. Seeing this, the Sea Heart Island's island master led a total of 30 heavenly immortal experts to guard the island's exit. Because this platform had been built, if everyone left the Sea Heart Island, the loss he would suffer would be immeasurable. Everyone, please stop. I swear on the reputation of the Sea Heart Island that this Snake Basin altar was not built for you. If you don't believe me, you can take a look at the humans on it. This altar is for the execution of these humans. I've received definite information that as long as these humans are dealt with, this altar will be dismantled. Everyone was discussing spiritedly for a while. Many people looked into the distance and found that there were indeed several humans on the altar. Seeing that everyone was relieved, the island master hurriedly said, "The Desolate Snake Prison has issued a ban. From today onwards, no one is allowed to set foot in the Desolate Snake Prison. Violators will be killed without mercy. Since the decree says so, it means that they won't interfere with us. You don't have to leave at all. From today onwards, I and everyone's commission will be reduced to 10% until this altar is dismantled." The island master's words made everyone feel much more at ease. There were indeed many people who were hesitant, but in the end they chose to stay. The trend of everyone leaving gradually weakened. However, many people were curious as to who was to be executed on the altar. However, when they thought of the words Snake Basin Altar, they couldn't help but feel their scalps go numb. This was the most terrifying punishment for those who violated the decree in the Desolate Snake Prison. Of course, most of it was used on humans. Once the altar was opened, countless snake beasts would gradually appear on it from the entire Desolate Snake Prison. The person being punished would have to endure 49 days of being bitten and torn apart before their soul would scatter and they would die completely. On the altar, Yuzhan, Mulong, Xinyu, and young Master Lien all had gloomy expressions. After the four of them entered the ninth netherworld, they were hunted down by the demonic snake prison a few days later. The result was obvious. On the other hand, Big Dipper Phoenix and Zhong Lang had escaped and still hadn't been captured. Yuzhan stared at Mulong and the other two and said in a low voice, "Emo Xian built this altar and issued a decree to get our Lord to come and kill us. He went through so much trouble because he's afraid of the transcendent ruler. If our Lord comes, he'll definitely kill us. Later, he'll use the decree as an excuse to use the power of the entire ninth netherworld to restrain the transcendent ruler." Mulong and the other two nodded. The 10 heavens and the netherworld already had a contract. The 4 overlords controlled the 4 regions of the netherworld and had supreme authority. Once the 10 heavens interfered, they would become enemies with the entire netherworld. Chapter 659. Take Back Your Life. Yuzhan and the other 3 stood on the altar. Although they knew what Emo Xian meant, they couldn't do anything about it. A snake tattoo protected their heart veins. At this moment, they couldn't even commit suicide. The altar was built there, and as long as Long Chen was still in the netherworld sea of flames, they would see him sooner or later. Emo Xian wasn't worried at all. He knew that Long Chen would come back. It was just a matter of time. Of course, if Long Chen didn't come, he would slowly torture them to death. At the very least, Long Chen would lose 4 divine generals. He didn't understand why Long Chen's 4 divine generals were so weak. One of them hadn't even reached the middle stage of the Earth celestial stage. Don't let those 4 die. Every cycle lasts 49 days. As long as Long Chen doesn't appear, let them experience this kind of pain again and again. If after 10 cycles, Long Chun still doesn't appear, kill them. After Mo Xian finished speaking, rays of light started to flicker below the altar. Day after day, the netherworld sea of flames had calmed down a long time ago, and the altar in the snake basin had become a topic of conversation. The 4 people had already been swallowed by the snake basin 3 times. In other words, it had been nearly 5 months since the altar was built. In the center of the netherworld sea of flames, flames surged like boiling water. Xiao, xiao, xiao. 3 pitch-black flames soared into the sky and turned into rays of light. Behind the flames was a sovereign realm expert, who was surrounded by a fiery domain, following closely behind. That person was Long Chun. Now, the god behind him seemed to have become corporeal, and his original human form had disappeared without a trace. He had completely turned into a 5-clawed golden dragon. It's been 5 months. Don't you think it's too late to leave now? Long Chen looked at the 3 flames rushing toward the courtyard. At that moment, Long Chen didn't have the frost of the cold moon or the ice of the serene water around him. However, the netherworld sea of flames had no effect on him. Rumble. The 3 flames were extremely fast, but suddenly, it was as if they had hit a wall. They stopped with a loud bang. Unknowingly, Zhong Lang had already stood in front of them, blocking the path of the flames. At this moment, Zhong Lang had undergone an earth-shattering change. His blood-red aura was so strong that even the nether fire was afraid of it. Heavenly wolf blood qi. Long Chen's eyes suddenly narrowed, and his eyes were filled with gratification. He never expected that Zhong Lang would have such good fortune in this place. The 2 of them charged towards the 9 underworld flames one after another. Long Chen grabbed one of the pitch-black flames, while the other 2 rushed into the depths of the sea of fire. However, with Zhong Lang's help this time, this 9 underworld flame was already very easy to obtain. As the 2 of them chased each other, they gradually approached the safety island on the shore. There were even figures gradually appearing in the surroundings. Many people saw Long Chun from afar and immediately bowed to him. The Nirvana realm late-stage aura emitted from his body was like a mountain, causing everyone to be unable to breathe. 9 underworld flames. Heavens! That's the 9 underworld's fire. 9 underworld flames. Someone actually found the 9 underworld flames in the netherworld sea of flames. Look, isn't that the man who entered before? He's actually a sovereign realm late-stage Nirvana realm expert. Cries of surprise rose and fell one after another. Just as they were about to enter the safety island, Long Chen had already grabbed the second 9 underworld flame. The surrounding people watched from afar, and their faces were filled with admiration and envy. However, no one dared to snatch it. Zhong Lang let out a loud roar, and blood-red spiritual energy in his mouth blocked the last 9 underworld flame for half a breath. Long Chen nodded slightly and reached out to grab it. However, at this moment, a stream of light streaked across the sky, and a huge blade light directly slashed towards Long Chen's arm. A sovereign realm expert. Long Chen's arm couldn't help but stop. The 9 underworld flame that was about to reach his hand suddenly shot out again. Not far away, a middle-aged man in luxurious clothes flew out and grabbed it. At this moment, the 2 of them were already standing in the sky above the safety island. The originally noisy voices below had also quieted down. No one expected that a second sovereign realm expert would appear at this moment to snatch the 9 underworld flame. Moreover, the 9 underworld flame was already in his hand. The middle-aged man in luxurious clothes seemed a little proud. Looking at the 9 underworld flame in his hand, he smiled at Long Chun and said, "By Ichio of the 5th heaven, thank you for helping me get the flame. I will definitely repay you generously in the future." The man couldn't help but smile. The 9 underworld flame was priceless. It could be said that it was priceless. Not only was it a top-grade material in the refining world, but its benefits to sovereign realm experts were also no less than any elixir. However, countless people had gone deep into the netherworld flame sea, but few could bring out the 9 underworld flame. This item had not appeared for at least 100 years. Long Chun stared at the man, narrowed his eyes slightly, and said indifferently, "According to your words, you don't plan to return this flame?" The man shook his head, seeming to feel the chill in Long Chen's words. However, this person didn't care at all. Instead, his words were full of playfulness as he waved his hand and said, "Since you helped me get the flame, you should take out one of the other 2. You can keep one as a reward." As a reward? Long Chen seemed to have heard the biggest joke in the world. He had used all his effort to obtain this item. If it weren't for the Dragon Palace and the Primal Chaos Golden Codex hiding in his soul, he would probably have died in the Netherworld Flame Sea. And now, this person wanted to seize the other 2 with just a few words. Xiao, xiao, xiao. Before Long Chen could say anything, several figures rushed out. The one in the lead was a woman. "It's you." The woman stared at Long Chen, her eyes flickering. Long Chen suddenly realized and said, "It seems that you asked me for the ice of quiet water to save him. Interesting." Long Chen had never imagined that the person who had been saved by the ice of quiet water that he had given away would shamelessly steal his 9 underworld flames. The sovereign surnamed by was also stunned. Then, he snorted coldly and said, "This is the person who clearly had enough ice of quiet water but didn't hand it over? If he had taken out all the ice of quiet water, the 3 divine generals who were traveling with me wouldn't have died." Bai Ichio's words made Long Chen completely angry. He said coldly, "Saving a dog only to be bitten by a dog, is that all?" The woman stared at Long Chen and bit her lower lip. Naturally, she could hear the sarcasm in Long Chen's words. After a long while, the woman said, "You should take out another 9 nether fire. You only need to keep one. Senior White can take 2 and return to the 5th heaven. With the value of this item, it is enough to save the entire family." Ha ha ha. Long Chen was so angry that he laughed and shouted angrily, "Save the entire family? It's ridiculous. What does his business have to do with me? If you pity him, why don't you enter the Netherworld Flame Sea and look for more 9 underworld flames? When I stepped into this place that day, you said that you wanted to save someone, so I gave you the ice of quiet water. Now that you have saved this person, you want to steal my 9 underworld flame? You don't even know how to repay my kindness. Instead, you want to take the item in my hand." Chapter 660. The People of the Cloud Country. His life against the ice of serene water. As soon as Long Chen's words fell, the entire Sea Heart Island burst into an uproar. "This person, why isn't he leaving? Forget it. I don't think Senior White will make things difficult for a ruler. That's the 9 nether fire. This person is naturally resentful, but becoming an enemy of the Bai family is tantamount to digging one's own grave. The Bai family relied on the Cloud Country to establish itself in the 9th heaven. With the financial support of the Cloud Country, almost all the rulers of the various territories have to yield to them. It is said that at this time, there are still 2 rulers of the Yun family in the underworld. It is unwise to be their enemy. Everyone was discussing spiritedly. No one expected that Long Chen would take the initiative to attack. Unfortunately, Long Chen had no intention of holding back. As soon as his words fell, he rushed out with a sword in his hand. Nirvana Fire Domain. Pucci. Long Chen's Nirvana Fire Domain swept across the sky like a tide. If the fire domain was just a puddle before Long Chen's breakthrough, then it was now a lake. As soon as the fire domain dispersed, a vast aura spread out, causing everyone's expression to change drastically. No one expected that Long Chen would be the one who possessed the Nirvana Fire Domain. Even Bai Ichio couldn't help but be startled. He didn't expect Long Chen to have such strength. Baijiu coldly snorted. Under the watchful eyes of everyone, he didn't retreat. The long blade in his hand slashed out. Ruler's immortal technique, White Sun Blade. The divine image behind Baijiu fluctuated. The divine image in the sun disk turned out to be a towering ancient tree. As the ancient tree swayed, countless divine lights sprinkled down, increasing the attack power by 30%. Long Chen sneered. The long sword in his hand was still sheathed, but the sword in his hand changed. Ruler's immortal technique, Heaven Sealing Sword Array. The sword technique soared into the sky, and sword lights merged with the Nirvana fire domain in a flash, forming a sword waterfall that sealed off all directions. Puff puff puff. Sword lights blotted out the sky and intersected with Baijiu's blade technique in the air. The glaring brilliance almost overshadowed the light of the sun, and a series of muffled rumbling sounds made everyone unable to help but cover their heads and use their immortal power to resist. Towering waves surged above the raging sea of fire. The underworld fire was like a tide that wanted to burn the heavens. Under this attack, everyone on the island was horrified. At this moment, both of them were at the late-stage Nirvana realm. A battle between sovereigns could be said to be terrifying. Baijiu was pushed back several thousand meters. His expression was extremely ugly as Long Chen's strength had exceeded his imagination. Your Excellency, there's no need to be like this. As long as you're willing to take a step back, I'll definitely convince Senior Bai to give you those 2 nether flames. The young woman actually jumped between the two of them and began to mediate. Baijiu also seemed to feel that it was unwise to continue fighting with such a powerful sovereign expert. He replied in a deep voice, "Kid, apologize for what happened today and I won't bicker with you anymore. Otherwise, even if you have the Nirvana fire domain today, I will still make you suffer. My Bai family has been the sovereign for 3 generations. Even if the family is in trouble now, we're not afraid of anyone." Baijiu's current intention was to make Long Chen admit defeat in front of everyone and give him a way out. When Long Chen heard this, the smile on his face became even wider. These 2 people actually thought that the 9 underworld flames were already in their pocket. It seemed that they had never thought that he had exchanged his life for it. Swoosh swoosh. The 2 sword rays in Long Chen's hands disappeared from the blades in the blink of an eye. In the next moment they had already penetrated the woman's body. That day I gave you the ice of nether water. Today I'll return it with this body. Long Chen said coldly, "Today I won't destroy your soul." When Long Chen finished speaking, his eyes had already turned to look at Baijiu again. He said in a deep voice, "You stole my 9 underworld flames, and your cultivation level is almost the same as mine. I'll take your life." Impudent! Do you really think that I can't kill you today? When Baijiu saw that the young woman's body had been destroyed, he immediately flew into a rage. On the island, everyone saw that the 2 sovereigns were already like fire and water. Even with the protection of the enormous formation, they all distanced themselves from the 2 sovereigns. However, very few people left. A battle between 2 sovereigns at the late stage of the Nirvana realm was a rare opportunity. Buzz buzz buzz. Everyone looked around, and their expressions immediately changed. They saw that Baijiu's body was faintly surrounded by the colors of yin and yang. Baijiu stared at Long Chen and said, "Today, I'll use this yin-yang immortal technique to kill you." Yin-yang immortal technique, saber-slashing desolate ice. The huge god tree behind Baijiu moved like a gale, and the 2 colors of yin and yang swept out. The saber rays in his hand transformed into ice blades that filled the sky. The countless ice blades were like a desolate mountain, and they seemed to want to kill Long Chen. When Long Chen saw this, he couldn't help but view Baijiu in a higher regard. As a Nirvana sovereign, Baijiu was able to use the yin-yang immortal technique. He could be considered to have excellent comprehension ability and extraordinary battle prowess. Unfortunately, he encountered Long Chen. Long Chen could already easily use the yin-yang immortal technique more than 10 times when he was at the initial stage of the Nirvana realm. Now that he had already stepped into the late stage of the Nirvana realm, the yin-yang immortal technique was even easier to grasp. Yin-yang immortal technique, sword settles the universe. The sword in Long Chen's hand left his hand, and the Nirvana flame domain instantly transformed into a sword and disappeared around Long Chen. A dragon's roar came from the sun behind Long Chen, and the god tree inside the sun soared into the sky with a sword in its mouth. Yin-yang immortal technique. It's the yin-yang immortal technique again. Heavens, the two of them can actually use the yin-yang immortal technique at the Nirvana realm. It's been a long time since I've seen such a battle in the netherworld. Everyone cried out in alarm, but the two's attacks had already collided. Under the glaring light, everyone couldn't help but close their eyes. The two yin-yang immortal techniques collided, causing the netherworld flame see within a radius of 10,000 miles to dim. Poochie! Poochie! The moment the light disappeared, everyone was dumbstruck. The sword in Baichio's hand was broken, and his body was cut in half at the waist. Blood spurted out. How is this possible? Baichio is obviously at the late stage of the Nirvana realm, and he came from the fifth heaven and was nurtured by the Yun nation. How could he be so weak? Who exactly is this sovereign expert? He actually has such battle prowess. Which heaven is he from? Under the yin-yang immortal technique, this person actually has the upper hand. His battle prowess is monstrous. Countless people cried out in alarm as they stared at Long Chen. Under the yin-yang immortal technique, Baichio was defeated in just one move. Long Chen held the sword in his hand and snorted coldly. He was about to kill Baichio again. However, at this moment, above the netherworld flame sea on the left, two streams of light turned into rainbows and rushed toward the two. These two were also sovereigns. Seeing the two approaching, the fear in Baichio's eyes instantly returned to calmness. Your Excellency, are you Long Chen? Please don't be impulsive. Long Chen snorted coldly and was about to attack, but this person actually called out his name. Long Chen paused and looked at the two with a frown. Chapter 661. Preparations, the Fifth Heaven's Yun Nation. This was a nation of commerce that controlled 30% of the 10 heavens' wealth. Seeing these two people, Long Chen immediately thought of Yun Meier. The two walked in front of Long Chen, but before they could speak, Yunichu said in a deep voice, "Two guest elders, please help me capture this person. He still has 2 nether flames in his hands." As soon as this person's voice fell, the faces of the two Yun family sovereigns darkened. They coughed lightly and said to Baichio, "The two of us have received news that Senior Long Chen is our Yun family's benefactor. We came here today to greet him on behalf of Miss." The two of them originally came to the netherworld with Baichio. As a result, after Long Chen and Baichio fought, they immediately received news from the Yun nation. This news only allowed them to pay a visit to Long Chen and bring a few words. The two of them weren't members of the Yun family, but outsiders like Baichio. They could also become guest elders. The Yun family would provide them with all the resources they needed for cultivation, and they would complete some missions for the Yun family. In fact, this was the reason why the Yun family was able to stand tall in the fifth heaven. Money makes the world go round. This was probably referring to the Yun nation. Baichio's face turned purple, but he didn't say a word. He originally thought that these two people were here to help him, but now they were here to pay a visit to Long Chen. Baichio's body had already recovered. Seeing this, he coldly snorted and turned to leave. "Your Excellency, don't leave too quickly. It's better if you hand over the 9 nether flames." Long Chen sneered and stared at Baichio. Baichio's body froze. He turned around and stared at Long Chen, saying, "You really want to go to the extreme? Want your life?" or the 9 nether flames? Long Chen didn't move at all. The other 2 guest elders of the Yun family were also startled. They looked deeply at Long Chen, but they didn't intend to speak up for Baichio. The 2 of them only felt that Long Chen was somewhat arrogant. After a moment of silence, Baichio waved his hand and took out the 9 underworld flames. He said to Long Chen in a deep voice, "I, Baichio, will remember what happened today." After he finished speaking, Baichio turned around to leave. The woman whose body had been destroyed by Long Chen still wanted to preach to Long Chen. Before she could open her mouth, she could feel the strong murderous intent in Long Chen's eyes. She swallowed the words that were at the tip of her tongue. Long Chen snorted coldly. He put away the 9 underworld flames and was about to leave. He hated this woman very much. This woman's cultivation was clearly lacking, but she was so close to Baichio. She even put herself on a moral high ground. Every time he used the word save to bind Long Chen, it was as long as Long Chen did not give out the 9 underworld's fire, he would be an unpardonable evil. If it wasn't for the fact that she was a woman, Long Chen wouldn't have spared her life. Women, small people. These 2 terms were the most appropriate to describe this woman in front of him. Seeing that Long Chen and Zhong Lang were about to leave, the 2 sovereigns immediately leaped and stopped him. "Your Excellency, please stay a little longer. Our young miss has something important to discuss with you." As soon as their voice fell, Long Chen and Zhong Lang bypassed the 2 of them and set off again. Long Chen said indifferently, "Go back and tell your young miss that I'm not in the mood today." The 2 sovereigns looked at Long Chen and Zhong Lang leaving and smiled bitterly. On the safe island, everyone looked at each other in dismay. Their eyes were filled with shock and doubt. Long Chen's words intimidated Baichio. Handing over the 9 underworld's fire was arrogant but domineering. Baichio handing over the 9 underworld's fire showed that he was afraid. Who the hell is this guy? Even the 2 sovereigns of the Cloud Nation of the 5th heaven treated him as an equal and respected him so much. "Didn't you hear? The young miss of the Yun family is looking for him. I'm afraid this person has a lot to do with the Yun family. Tsk, this person is so arrogant, daring to disrespect the face of the Cloud Nation. Long Chen? Why does this name sound so familiar?" After Long Chen left, the safe island was in an uproar. At first, many people were shocked by Long Chen's battle prowess, but soon they discovered that he was the person waiting for the newly built Snake Basin altar in the desolate Snake Prison. In the past 5 months, many people had already learned the reason for Dark Demon's actions. It was for the young man who was now at the peak of 10 Directions Heaven. Long Chen, who was accepted as a disciple by a transcendent sovereign. Do you think that Long Chen will really go to the desolate Snake Prison to save people? Once he violates the desolate Snake Prison's ban, I'm afraid only death will await him. Long Chen's battle prowess today is really shocking. No wonder that Transcendent Sovereign wanted to accept him as a disciple. So what if he's strong? This isn't 10 Directions Heaven, but the 9th Underworld. He provoked one of the 4 overlords of the Underworld, Dark Demon's Sovereign. After all, he's only a disciple and hasn't formally acknowledged a master. If he violates the ban and is killed, I'm afraid that even Transcendent Sovereigns will become enemies with the entire Underworld. Everyone was discussing animatedly. The Transcendent Sovereign, a hidden expert, had long been known by everyone because of 10 Directions Heaven's announcement of accepting a disciple. Long Chen was also remembered by everyone because of his announcement, becoming an existence that must not be provoked. However, who would have thought that Long Chen would encounter one of the 4 overlords, Dark Demon Sovereign, not long after arriving in the 9th Underworld? On the other side, Long Chen had left the Netherworld Sea of Flames, but he hadn't really left the border between the Underworld and the desolate Snake Prison. He could even clearly see Yu Zhan and the others on the altar from afar. At this moment, their bodies were riddled with holes and looked extremely terrifying. Long Chen could even see the demonic transformation jades hanging on their waists. Perhaps they were there so that they could personally witness the terrifying appearance of their bodies being devoured by 10,000 snakes. Dark Demon Sovereign's viciousness exceeded Long Chen's imagination. Long Chen's eyes were filled with gloomy killing intent. However, he knew that now wasn't the time to act rashly. Dark Demon Sovereign could become one of the 4 overlords of the underworld, which was enough to show how terrifying he was. Zhong Lang stared at the people on the altar from afar and asked sternly, "My lord, when will we act?" Long Chen took a deep breath and replied, "At the very least, I have to reach the Yin-Yang realm. Otherwise, I'll definitely lose this battle. Dark Demon Sovereign has been famous for a long time, so his cultivation is at least at the middle stage of the Yin-Yang realm. Moreover, this battle will probably take place in the demonic snake prison. His strength will increase by another 30%. Zhong Lang seemed to have heard how terrifying Dark Demon Sovereign was and couldn't help but fall silent. Their lives won't be in danger for a short time. I'll fuse with 2 of these 9 underworld flames, so I might have a chance to reach the Yin-Yang realm." Long Chen waved his hand and took out 3 underworld flames. The sword spirit's shadow appeared at the same time. She stared at Long Chen and said, "I need 2 9 underworld flames, but I have a way to let you reach the Yin-Yang realm with 1 9 underworld flame. The success rate will be 70%. Chapter 662. Long Chen was startled by the sword spirit's words. He frowned and asked, "Are you really 70% sure? They can't wait much longer." Long Chen couldn't help but look towards the courtyard. Yu Zhan and the others on the altar seemed to have sensed Long Chen's presence and looked over. The light in their eyes was very weak, but it was obvious that they didn't want Long Chen to come. They knew that once Long Chen came, there would be a 90% chance of survival. Hearing Long Chen's words, the sword spirit nodded and said, "I will do what I say, but the pain is not something that ordinary people can endure." As soon as he finished speaking, Long Chen handed the 2 9 underworld flames to him. As long as one could reach the Yin-Yang realm, suffering some pain was nothing. Under Zhong Lang's lead, they quickly found a place to stay in the mountains. Zhong Lang's howls attracted many demonic beasts to surround them. Long Chen said to Zhong Lang, "Big Dipper Phoenix will come soon. Tell him to go to a temple in White Bone City. Send a message to one of them. Tell him to try his best to kill Mo Xian. As long as we win this battle, I will completely repair his statue in the demonic realm for 100 years. Although Zhong Lang was full of doubts about Long Chen's words, he didn't have any intention of asking. As expected, Long Chen and the sword spirit hadn't even been together for half a day when Big Dipper Phoenix came. Big Dipper Phoenix's aura was even sharper now, and there were bolts of lightning circling around his neck. He looked very gorgeous. Big Dipper Phoenix saw Zhong Lang and said in a deep voice, "No wonder you stupid wolf wasn't captured. You were with the Lord. The Lord has ordered you to go to White Bones City immediately and pass on a message." Zhong Lang expressionlessly conveyed Long Chen's words. Even his words were very similar. Big Dipper Phoenix snorted coldly. Hearing Zhong Lang's words, he didn't stop and left again. Big Dipper Phoenix smiled bitterly and said to himself, "If I knew this would happen, I wouldn't have come back. Now that we are fighting against the demonic snake prison, how can we win?" Although Big Dipper Phoenix said this, he didn't go against Long Chen's will and went all the way to White Bone City. Inside the cave, Long Chen looked at the scene in front of him with an ugly expression. That poignant sword spirit had already swallowed the 9 underworld flames in a flash. Apart from the appearance of 2 pitch-black flame patterns on the sword, there was nothing else unusual about it. On the other hand, the poignant woman's temperament had undergone an earth-shattering change. Her long hair began to burn like the flames of the 9 underworlds. What caused Long Chen's heart to palpitate was the third 9 underworld flame in the sword spirit's hand. The flame in his hand seemed to have a life of its own as it took the form of a human. The sword spirit woman stared at Long Chen and said, "Although you have the God realm and Nirvana fire domain, which allows you to cultivate in the netherworld and ignore the devil chi, if you want to forcibly refine the 9 underworld flames, the efficiency will not even reach 50%. Fuse your soul with this spirit, and then borrow the power of the netherworld flame C's essence and the fortune inside to obtain 120% of the effect." Long Chen looked at the specter-like ghost in front of the poignant woman and said with a frown, "If you fuse this thing with your soul, the consequences will be unthinkable if there is a backlash." The sword spirit woman couldn't help but sneer and said to Long Chen, "As the sword spirit of the sword in your hand, I have already noticed that your divine sense cannot be shaken." Long Chen didn't reply. He waved his hand and absorbed the specter formed by the 9 underworld flames into his body. Buzz! A violent rumbling sound came from Long Chen's body. His face was sometimes malevolent and sometimes clear, as if he was experiencing unprecedented pain. Half of his body was occupied by the sovereign's power and half by the devil chi. His entire body seemed to be split apart. From the tip of his nose to his crotch, the left side of his body was pitch black like ink. The left side of his body would occasionally roar. It was actually a specter, and its appearance was exactly the same as Long Chen's. The right side of his body was like an ancient well, emitting divine light that filled the sky. Only his eyes were clear from the beginning. Bang! 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 An explosive sound suddenly came from Long Chen's dantian, and blood swords soared into the sky. Then, a ball of flame burned fiercely from within. The innate devil chi it emitted was so substantial that it swept through Long Chen's body. The sword spirit woman's eyes were like torches. She stared at Long Chen, and her eyes gradually glowed. She muttered to herself, "It seems that the human race is not as weak as the legends say. He can withstand such pain without making a sound." When she finished speaking, the sword spirit woman hid in the holy weapon again. However, she didn't know that at this moment she was very confused. Because other than the explosion in his dantian, he didn't even feel the slightest bit of pain. The only thing he felt was that his cultivation was rising rapidly. The 9 underworld flames seemed to be impatient to give all its power to Long Chen. Long Chen faintly felt that something was wrong, but he was powerless at this moment. Although his divine sense was clear, he had lost control of his body. 1 day, 2 days. For 2 whole months, Zhong Lang stood guard at the entrance of the cave, not taking a single step out. But at this moment, his eyes were bloodshot. Because during these 2 months there was a sacrifice on the Serpent Basin altar. Mulong, Yuzhan, and the other 3 screamed in despair for 10 days and 10 nights. Every time they were about to die, they were saved by the people of the demonic snake prison. And the person who saved them was Mo Xian himself. He seemed to be waiting for Long Chen. Bang, bang, bang. Inside the cave, a series of muffled sounds came from Long Chen's body. It sounded like a heavy drum. The sword spirit woman stood in front of Long Chen. She was very puzzled, and there was a trace of worry in her eyes. What's going on? This time, his pain should be in his divine soul. Why is there a change in his physical body? The sword spirit woman muttered to herself. As soon as she finished speaking, Long Chen's body began to crack from his head. It was very terrifying. The sword spirit woman's original intention was to use the 9 underworld flames to completely refine Long Chen's divine soul and absorb the pure innate devil chi to transform into divine power. But now the scene completely overturned her idea. The sword spirit woman's hand flashed with spiritual light. She was about to strike Long Chen, but as soon as her fingertip touched him, a pitch-black light blasted her away. Puchi. The sword spirit woman's mouth was bleeding. She stared at Long Chen in horror. One of Long Chen's eyes also slowly looked at her. With this look, the sword spirit woman felt as if she had fallen into an ice cave. Death, loneliness, brutality, madness. This look made the sword spirit woman feel as if she had seen all the evils in the world. Demon, how is this possible? With the stability of your divine sense, how can you be possessed by a demon? The sword spirit woman cried out involuntarily. The sword spirit woman's hand moved. She wanted to control the sacred sword to wake Long Chen up. Chapter 663. Distraction. Time flew, and half a year passed in the blink of an eye. Perhaps 100 years in the devil world was equivalent to a year in the 10 directions celestial domain, so no one cared about time. At least, there were still countless people gathered at the edge of the underworld, looking at the altar from afar. Everyone wanted to know if Long Chen would come. Would he fight demonic snake prison lord Emotian for these divine generals? He won't come. Let's go down to the sea to find more ores today. This way we can live a few more years in the underworld. I don't think so. That person was so arrogant when he fought by Ichio that day. He's definitely not a coward. A coward? Haha, you're just an old fart with a year of life left. You can live 100 years in the underworld. If you're asked to die, I'm afraid you'd rather be a coward. Everyone was discussing, but there were still people watching the altar every day. Last time, when Long Chen and Bai Ichu fought, the battle between the two sovereigns had caused everyone to be both fearful and shocked. Many people were looking forward to seeing the sovereigns fight again. They hoped to break through and enter the Nirvana realm. After all, there were too many people here because of the different laws in the devil world. However, the cruelty of the underworld made them want to return to the 10 directions celestial domain at all times. Only by entering the sovereign realm could they increase their lifespan. On this day, the mountains suddenly shook and the earth shook. The people who were preparing to go out to sea stopped and looked into the distance. There was a continuous mountain range. There were many demonic beasts in it and few people. They were almost 100,000 miles away. The shaking from such a distance was puzzling. Some people even began to guess that a powerful demonic beast had appeared. Some even flew into the sky, thinking that an opportunity had appeared and caused this phenomenon. Outside the cave, Zhong Lang looked at the mountain behind him in a daze. The entire mountain range was collapsing at a speed visible to the naked eye, and the center of it all was the cave Long Chen was in. Inside the cave, the sword spirit woman looked at the scene in front of her in a daze. She felt that it was both real and illusory. Because at this moment, Long Chen's body was divided into 2 parts by a bloody line from the top of his head. The left side was as black as ink, without any immortal energy or life. The right side was pure and holy like a god. It took several months for this physical body to completely take on this appearance. The sword spirit woman could feel that there were 2 people in front of her. Apart from their appearances, they were completely different. Rumble. A burst of dazzling white light flickered at the bloodline, and the 2 bodies on the left and right separated out of thin air. Then, the bodies merged together again. At this moment, Long Chen looked as if someone had chopped off half of his body and was using his divine power to reconstruct his body. But now, both the left and right halves of his body were in such a state. In the blink of an eye, 3 people appeared in the cave. 2 Long Chen and a female sword spirit. The sword spirit looked at this scene in a daze and said, "Avatar, this is an avatar of the original body. How is this possible?" The divine power behind Long Chen was like a tide, and the gods behind him were unprecedentedly pure and holy. He stared at the person beside him as if he was still looking at himself. This feeling was extremely strange, as if he was looking at himself without the copper mirror. "You are that demonic seed, the thing produced by Dark Star Organization's forbidden technique. You unexpectedly swallowed my demonic consciousness." Long Chen suddenly realized. When he saw himself covered in demonic energy, he immediately understood the reason. No, it should be said that I used that demonic seed to give birth to myself. That demonic body stared at Long Chen and said calmly, "The 9 underworld flame originally had a spirit, and it was like nourishment for the demonic seed." Long Chen couldn't help but feel a sweetness in his throat. He felt as if he was controlling 2 bodies at the same time, and this feeling was extremely unbearable. They were clearly him, but their thoughts were completely different. Pucci. A strange scene appeared. The 2 completely different Long Chen spat out blood at the same time, and there wasn't the slightest difference in their appearances. You are me, and I am you. The demonic body Long Chen's eyes were filled with coldness, and soon after, he revealed a fiendish smile to the god body and said, "This is a gift bestowed to us by the heavens, making everything possible." His voice faded away. Demonic body Long Chen unexpectedly turned into black smoke and disappeared among the shadows. Long Chen took a deep breath, and with a wave of his right hand, the holy sword appeared in his hand. He then turned to the sword spirit and said, "Let's go, it's time to settle this dispute in demonic snake prison. We still have many things to do." The sword spirit was still somewhat unable to understand, and she asked in a daze, "That demonic consciousness clone, you can't control it? Why did he leave?" "I am him, and he is me, but we are completely different." Long Chen shook his head and smiled helplessly. "This technique disappeared long ago in the ancient era, but I didn't expect that it would reappear in my body." The ancient era, that was an era from millions of years ago. Even Long Chen had only heard about it once or twice from the mouth of a transcendent ruler. Long Chen didn't answer why the sword spirit's clone had left. Because he knew that this technique would be a killing move. Rumble. The divine radiance was withdrawn, and the entire mountain range was thoroughly shattered. When Long Chen appeared with a sword in his hand, thousands of li away from him was already filled with people. Everyone's expression was incomparably strange. No one had expected that the source of such a huge disturbance would be Long Chen. Zhong Lang and Big Dipper Phoenix stood in front of Long Chen, but they also didn't know why it was like this. Big Dipper Phoenix God couldn't help but become gloomy because he could clearly see the god behind Long Chen. Although his god had become more powerful, he still didn't have yin and yang energy, which meant that he was still in the nirvana realm. So he had been hiding here all along and didn't dare to take action to save the 4 god generals. Now, he has created such a huge commotion to please the crowd. I think he doesn't dare to fight against Mysterious Demon and is hiding here to collect his corpse. Don't talk so much. Do you want to die? If you were in the Nirvana realm, would you dare to challenge Mysterious Demon? The crowd was noisy like the chirping of insects, but Long Chen could hear it clearly. A faint smile appeared at the corner of his mouth, but he didn't take it to heart. His eyes had already landed on the sacrificial altar. Long Chen's figure transformed into a ray of light that soared into the sky and rushed toward the sacrificial altar. His voice was like rolling thunder, and the wind and clouds changed color. "With my God, I refine the yin and yang of heaven and earth and control the fate of heaven." Once Long Chen's voice fell, the world suddenly became quiet, and the entire world turned black and white. The dragon-shaped god behind Long Chen turned black and white at a speed visible to the naked eye, and its head and tail coiled around each other like a yin-yang diagram. The nirvana flame domain that filled the sky suddenly collapsed, and yin and yang energy flowed through it like a river, as if they wanted to create another world. At the same time, you're tuning in to the Phoenix Knights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.